afternoon, council members. You should have received a copy of the 2016 fiscal year budget last Monday, April 27th, which is the date that's required by city charter. And just first, I want to just thank Yolanda Jones and Matt Lane and all the department heads and division heads who put the budget together. It's very complex, not only in the fact that we have very limited funding sources and we're always having increasing expenses, but it's also a complex budget because of the number of funds and departments that we have. So a lot of work goes into it, and we appreciate everything that they do to put together the citywide budget of $111 million. The presentations will be over the next 3 meetings. As you know, we have a meeting next week as well. So tonight is the introduction and the general fund, and Chief Van Loo is going to give an update on the fire department. We're going to be focusing on departments that are just having changes or significant projects this year. Ms. Jones and her staff will do the overview for the general fund and the citywide budget, and then we'll have department heads present for some specific issues that we're having with the city. If you've taken a look at the budget, you can see that this year the general fund budget's decreasing by about $500,000. And I'd like everyone to keep in mind that the general fund includes cemeteries, weed cutting, abatement, public safety inspections, and many other functions. So all of those areas are what we depend on the general fund for, and we're seeing a cut there, and also increases in pension costs and in healthcare. And as you know from all of our presentations, we do see a lot of positives in the city with Delta College selecting downtown, and they're looking at selecting a specific site in the next month or so. And the Central Michigan students will be attending classes here in Saginaw this summer. Even with that, we do have reality with our financial issues, and we still see a decreasing tax base of about 5% in the city. And we had anticipated for a number of years that would start to stabilize and hopefully go up, but it's not going down as quickly as it was going at one time. If you recall some of our previous budgets, they would decrease by 20-30%. So it's stabilizing, but it's still not at a quite stable level, or it has not begun to improve yet. Some positives, though, I think that we'll see in the upcoming years. We are still working with the retirees on the healthcare issue, and I think that either before the fiscal year begins or shortly after the fiscal year begins, we'll start to see a little bit more movement with a compromise in that area, I'm hoping. And we also will begin to look at some other ideas about the pension system in this fiscal year. We started looking at that about a month ago, 2 months ago, on some different things, just because of some news that we have about the cost of pensions and the cost over the next 10 years. I think it's time we need to start looking at some alternatives for amortization periods and possibly changing that and maybe doing something a little different with our system. So that's what we're going to be working on this year, which could affect this year's budget if we do something prior to the end of the year, but definitely should have an impact on next year, and maybe we can have some relief with that. Again, in this year's budget, we have identified capital needs by all of our departments, but there isn't funding there to do most of those projects aside from water, wastewater, and streets. So again, this year we're not putting money into the buildings like we should be. So that's something to keep in mind as well as we move forward. That's something that if we don't start to do in the next few years, that's going to have a very significant impact down the road. Okay. For the public, copies of the budget are available in the clerk's office here in City Hall, and also available on the city's website. We'll double check that, maybe make it a little bit easier on the front page to get for the public to look at. As I said, we'll be having meetings, committee of the whole tonight, and then next Monday night and the following Monday on the 18th is where we'll be looking to have the public hearing and also hope to adopt the budget at that time. Any questions from citizens can be emailed to Ms. Jones. Her email address is listed here and can be called, and the same with council. If you have questions tonight on the budget for what's presented, we'll hope to answer what we can now, but if not, we'll take those questions down and get answers back to you in writing. And of course, over the next 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks, you can email any questions either to my office or to Ms. Jones directly, and we'll get the responses to you as quickly as possible. And we have a hard stop time. The mayor and I talked about this, so we need to be done at 6 o'clock tonight. So Ms. Jones is going to come up now and move forward with the general fund portion, and then following that, Chief Van Loo will talk about the fire department. If we run up against that stop time, we'll finish it up during the management update portion of the regular meeting.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. As part of the information that was provided to you today, you should have received a packet that says expenditure analysis summary, which looks like this here. Basically what it does, it shows by fund the page number and the total dollar amounts, revenue and expenditures. So I'm going to start off discussing the budget overview. Again, this budget, like similar budgets before, reflects our commitment to provide quality services to our residents while preserving our organizational long-term financial viability. The 2016 budget is projected to be $111.05 million. This represents a $14.5 million reduction from the previous year. We still face declining revenues, and there has been significant reduction in our fund reserves appropriated and our bond proceeds and our enterprise funds, as well as grant allocations. So this year, you'll realize that the Homeland Security Safer Grant will no longer be in the budget. As we continue to present the budget, we will discuss more in detail all the changes comparing the current year to the next year. When you look at the general fund budget for fiscal year 16, it is projected to be $30.97 million. This represents roughly a $500,000 decrease, or 1.58% from the 2015 approved budget of $31.46 million. Non-general fund accounts for roughly 72% of the total citywide budget of $111 million. As in similar years, reflected on the graph is our resource allocation by fund. The general fund represents 27.89% of the total budget. Special revenue funds represent 16.29%, and the largest part of the budget is represented in our enterprise funds, which are 42.12%. What you will realize from the budget for 2016, we have a new enterprise fund, the boat launch fund. It has been reclassified to an enterprise fund. Internal service funds represent 6.27%, and our fiduciary funds represent 7.42%. Looking at our tax mills over the last 5 years, what you'll realize is that for the last 3 years, including next year, it all is at 14.8830. So that's our tax levy, and our consumer price index is at 1.6% as well. To graph that for you to give you a better understanding, again, as in previous budget presentation, this graph reflects the continuous decrease in the taxable values since 2011. This table also reflects that the largest reduction realized by the city is in real property values. So in 2011, the real property values were assessed at $471.49 million. By fiscal year 2015 is at $391.01 million. Personal property values remain relatively flat since 2011, but as you can see from this graph, it's steadily declining each year. At this point, it should also be pointed out that there's been little to minimal change to the personal prop tax legislation that we discussed last year. We do know that change is going to occur, but we don't know exactly what the impact will be. As a result of the decrease in the state equalized value, the net taxable value will decrease by 4.77%. And I've already received one question with regards to what is the taxable value for this year compared to next year. For 15, it was 497.27 million, which you can see looking at the 2014 tax year, and for fiscal or tax year 15, which is our 16 budget, is 473.53 million. So that represents that 4.77% decrease. So looking at our revenues, in 2016, our budget does account for the revenue decrease. Our major street fund revenues are going to decrease, and that's $167,000, and that's primarily associated to a decrease in one-time revenue sources received in fiscal year 15, as well as a reduction in our reimbursements. Grants will decrease. I've previously mentioned that Homeland Security Safer Grant is completed at the end of this year. The auto theft prevention grant will be zero for the city. During 15, we evaluated the program to see if it was a viable program to continue with. Based on what the analysis was, the operation is not, we're not receiving enough money to proceed with this grant. At one point in time, we had 200 auto theft issues during the year. We're down to 4. So we looked at how much we were contributing from the general fund and how much we were receiving in grant monies, and thought that it wasn't economically feasible to continue with this service. Transfers. The general fund will transfer less monies to community public policing fund, celebration park fund, and there will not be an allocation to the auto theft fund. Water and sewer operations will decrease by $735,000 and $1.9 million respectively. This decrease is due to reductions in the amount of capital projects that will be, and bond projects that will be completed during 2016. So you're going to see a reduction in your bond proceeds and your retained earnings. And your largest decrease that's really kind of making up that $14 million is in the police and fire pension fund, and we'll go over this in more details next week. But this fund itself will decrease by $8.5 million, and this reduction is due to the Police and Command Association of Michigan's approving the movement of their pension plans to the Michigan Employee Retirement System. To offset these increases, you'll realize a new fund. It's the Downtown Development Authority 2011 district. The city has been capturing funds in that district, but we're recognizing it as a fund. It was realized in the current year, so now we're recognizing it in the budget. User charges will increase slightly. You're going to realize that in your radio operation funds and your motor pool funds. The radio operation fund is basic for maintenance. You're increasing the cost of maintenance, so we had to increase the rate to the users. And then the motor pool fund, we end up reallocating personnel from the water and sewer funds over to the motor pool funds, just returning them back to the motor pool funds. So, similar to the revenues, citywide expenditures are going to decrease by $14.5 million. This graph is actually in your budget overview section, just to give you an understanding of how the 2015 budget compares to 2016 proposed. The largest decrease, like I said before, will be in your personnel services, and that is due to the movement of the police pension system over to MERS. That's the largest movement. In addition, we're eliminating 14 positions in total, 13 from the fire department because of the completion of the SAFER grant, and Chief Van Loo will detail what happens. We're trying to get an extension on this, but he'll get into more details later on in the presentation. Also, we had a plant operator A position in the budget. We budgeted for it in fiscal year 15. We never filled that position, so that position was eliminated for 16. We also looked at re-amortizing the MERS pension system. This budget reflects that. We also see a slight reduction in our retiree health care composite rates for fiscal year 16. Our Blue Cross Blue Shield rate decreases by 0.21%, and our Blue Care Network rate decreases by 11%. We also see reductions in our dental and vision insurance healthcare costs. To offset this increase in personnel, you're going to see between a 3 and 4% increase in your active healthcare, and that's dependent on your family type. We also have some promotions built into the budget. Our administrative support clerk person in the city manager's office will be going from part-time to full-time, and she'll be shared between 4 different departments. We also have grade and step increases for various personnel. We also are budgeting 100% of the finance director. As you recall, for fiscal year 15, we budgeted 50% for the budget. We will be budgeting the total 100% for next year. In operating services, in the middle of the graph there, you're going to see a $3.32 million decrease, and this is largely due to reduction in the amount of construction projects that we've anticipated completing during the year, and that's largely in the water and sewer operations. Capital outlay, it's decreased by $2,590. That's like 0.11%. Miscellaneous represents transfers, increase to fund equity, debt service, grants, and block grant services. What you're realizing there is a 7.47% increase, and this increase is primarily due to we have additional installment payments. Remember, we purchased some trucks, 3 tandem trucks, a high-end loader, a couple foreman trucks. We're starting to pay the debt service. Fire truck, bought a fire truck too. We're starting to pay the debt service on that. I just wanted to show you also what the retiree healthcare obligation looks like. As you can see, in previous years we showed this before, but this is including all the comprehensive annual financial report information, as well as what we're proposing it will be for 2016. You see it's roughly around 10 million. It was high for 2015, and then it's about 10.2. And then, like the city manager has already mentioned, we're looking at some movement there. We also want to show you, based on your strategic plans and goals, how the 2015 and 2016 compare to each other. You can see from our crime and public safety is decreased, so has neighborhood revitalization, city beautification has decreased. You're seeing a reduction in most areas except for organizational development, which stays the same. And comparing your general fund budgets and your citywide budget, where you're realizing is that we're seeing a steady decrease or trending downward. So let's look at the general fund budget. As the city manager mentioned, I'll be presenting the general fund revenues, and then Mr. Matthew Lane will be presenting the expenditure side. So the general fund budget for fiscal year 16, again, is projected at $30.97 million, and that's on page 55 through 69. Again, this represents almost a $500,000 reduction. And we're going to take a look at, in previous years, the 3 major revenue sources and see how they're doing for the general fund. And our 3 major general fund revenue sources are property taxes, state share revenue, and income taxes. So property taxes for fiscal year 16 will be $3.9 million. This is a 14.01% or $643,000 reduction from the current year. And this is basically due to the continuous decline in our property values. Our state share revenue, on the other hand, representing 25.96% of the general fund revenues, is projected to be $8.04 million. This is actually an increase of 1.55% from this current year, and that's largely due to increase in the amount of monies that we're receiving for constitutional revenue. Grant revenues for fiscal year 16 is expected to increase by 144,936. And when I'm looking at the total category of grants, that equals 647,936. This increase is largely due to, we have the Project Safe Neighborhood Grant that we accepted in 2015 that continues through until 2016. We also have been receiving monies from the state for the state fire protection allocation of $44,000. Each year we receive information from them. We fill out a questionnaire asking how much our fire department budget is, and these monies are in lieu of paying taxes there. So these monies were appropriated in the budget. And again, we've been receiving these funds for the last 2 years. License permits and fees, this area of the budget, general fund budget, will decrease by $44,250. This reduction is due in large part to reduction in some of our permit fees. Charge for services will be $1.05 million in fiscal year 16. This represents an increase of $115,400 from the current year, and this is due in part to the city receiving more funding for police billable overtime. To offset this increase, there will be a reduction in this area of some of the other overtime costs. So we have state and we have federal billable overtime for police, so one's going up, the other's going down. Fines and forfeitures are expected to decrease for fiscal year 16 by $107,775. This reduction is due to decreases in our parking lot receipts, in ordinance fines, our civil infraction fines, some of our parking violations, and our transfer affidavits. All of these reductions are based on historical trends. So when we're developing the budget, we look at 5 years worth of history, and if it's not there, we're not going to budget for it. Interest and rents are projected to increase by 10.66%. This is due to expected increases in interest rates for the cemetery endowments. During the course of the year, we've been reviewing our bank portfolio, and we're able to be proactive and try to get the best interest rates. So we're realizing additional revenues in that, in our internal rate of return. Reimbursements will be 3.01. This is a reduction of approximately $271,000. This is based on downward trend in our history. Furthermore, in fiscal year 15, we received monies for the VA parking lot. We're not going to get those monies. That project's been completed, so that came out the budget. Other revenues will decrease as well by $10,710 or 4.47% from the current year, and this is due to less revenues received from the Saginaw County for weed abatement and sale of firearms and eBay. It should be pointed out that there are no monies appropriated for operating transfer into the general fund, and we are not using any of our fund balance to balance out the fund. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Lane to carry forward with the general fund expenditures.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. The expenditures for the 2016 budget are going to decrease by just about $500,000 at $496 at $30.9 million. Our general fund, general government, in your budget book, it'll be on page 70 through 79. As an increase of $344,000, and this is due to actually the movement of the Office of Management and Budget from Fiscal Services into general government. This division consists of Ms. Jones, the Director of OMB, myself, the Administrative Budget Analyst, and 10% of the Economic Development Coordinator, which was formerly the SEDC Loan Support, in addition to 25% of the Administrative Support Clerk that's shared with the City Manager, Fiscal Services. In 2016, The administrative support clerk will become full-time, and will be shared 4 ways. In addition, the Assistant Director of Human Resources began getting a higher stepping grade. This is due to the fact that when the position was promoted from personnel generalist, she didn't receive her salary increase that she was entitled to. This position has taken on additional responsibility, and this change will be reflected in the budget. In the Office of City Council, funds have been allocated for the anticipated arrival of delegates from the city's sister city, Tokushima, Japan, during 2016. And in SGTV division, funds are budgeted for the purchase of a chair for the office. In elections, funds are budgeted for the purchase of a laptop to help out with the elections. And these increases are offset by the reamortization of the MERS pension obligation, which was reduced a little bit. Fiscal services in the general fund, which will be on page 80 in your document once you have a chance to look at it. The Department of Fiscal Service represents 9.31% of the total general fund expenditures, which will be $2.8 million for fiscal year 2016. This is actually a reduction of $257,000. As I explained just a couple minutes ago, OMB was moved over to general government, so that's the main part of that. To offset the reduction, 100% of the finance director position will be budgeted in fiscal year 2016. In the previous year, only 50% was budgeted because it was an unfilled position. The addition of 25%, again, of the administrative support clerk will be here. Postage in the income tax division increases, insurance costs in the administration and treasury divisions, in addition to required training for the employees in our assessing division. There is no capital budget in fiscal year 2016 for fiscal services. Didn't like that. Okay. General Fund, Community Public Safety Police, which will be on page 88 of your budget document, represents 33.55% of the total general fund expenditures. For fiscal year 2016, that's going to be $10.39 million. This represents an overall increase of $8,007. And this is mostly personnel services. During fiscal year 2016, 4 non-general fund positions will be reallocated to the general fund. 3 of them are coming back from the public safety fund, and 1 will be from the auto theft prevention fund. In addition, 50% of the public safety support specialists will be reallocated to police from fire. This position will be retitled to support service specialist. The offset for these changes will be savings from the move to the police and fire pension system to MERS, non-sworn positions for the reamortization of MERS, decreased retiree healthcare costs, the continued repayment of the retiree healthcare costs from the unfiled liability fund, reclassification of the firearm and property room specialist to property room and impound specialist. This position will have a lower step-in grade, so you'll see some savings with that. And operating services for this department will decrease by $244, and there's no capital in public safety police. Public safety fire in the general fund will be found on page 96 of your budget booklet. Fire represents 26.68% of the total general fund expenditures. For 2016, that's $8.26 million, and this represents a decrease of $406,000 from fiscal year 2015. Later on in the presentation, Chief Van Loo will get more in depth into the details of what the fire department budget is going to look like in 2016. And at this point, we'll talk about some of the budgetary changes for this department. Personnel services will realize the largest decrease of 5.9%. This is due to decreased retiree healthcare costs, the continued payment of retiree healthcare costs from the unfunded liability fund, savings in overtime. They've been doing a great job of getting their overtime down. 50% reallocation of the public safety support specialist to the community public safety police division. However, the operating services will increase by $61,800, and this is due to increased parts and supplies for hoses and LED emergency scene lighting, much needed housing needs, furniture, operating services account for the annual Jaws of Life purchase, as well as the SCBA testing equipment, which is going to be moved to a more technologically advanced system. So they'll need to upgrade that because we save money by doing the testing in-house. So we like to keep on doing that. Garbage removal, required purchases for turnout gear for the firefighters to keep them safe. But there will be no capital purchases made from the fire department this year, but we will continue to pay on the fire truck that we purchased in the previous year. Inspections and neighborhood services will be found on page 103 of your budget booklet. This represents 4.71% of the general fund expenditures, and it will be $1.45 million in 2016. This is a reduction of $84,229 from the previous year. This is due to the reallocation of the SCDC loan support position to OMB, a newly created Deputy Chief Inspector to the Environmental Improvement Division of the Rubbish Collection Fund, and a reduction in emergency demolition funding due to other funding sources for demolition services being available. There are no capital purchases budgeted for inspections in 2016, although they do have their leases on the 4 new vehicles that they'll be getting. Public services in the general fund can be found starting on page 108. These divisions, this conglomerate of divisions makes up 10.64% of the expenditures in the general fund and will equate to $3.29 million. And this is a reduction of $306,000 or 8.5%. This is due to the completion of the Veterans Affairs parking lot, which is finished in the current year, reamortization of MERS pension costs, and these reductions will be offset by normal contractual step and longevity increases that the employees get each year. The addition of 0.05% of the Director of Public Services moved back into the Administration Division of Public Services General Fund. And approximately $7,000 of capital outlay will be appropriated in the division for fiscal year 2016. And this is for a foreman truck and is allocated in the street light division. And it's shared with streets, water, sewer, and radio. Other general fund expenditures will start on page 118 of your budget booklet. And this accounts for 7.75% of the general fund expenditures. This division will equate to $2.39 million in fiscal year 2016. This is actually an increase of $205,000. This is due to a higher appropriation for the general fund of the GIS charges, services provided, higher appropriation for this fund, and a higher allocation to the Celebration Park Fund, slight increase to retiree healthcare costs for the previous fiscal year. This division was offset by a repayment from the unfunded liabilities fund. To slightly offset the increases, we have a reduction in operating transfers to the Community Policing Fund, the Auto Theft Prevention Fund, and the Public Safety Millage Fund. And now I'd like to introduce Chief Van Loo. He's going to talk more about the fire department.
of auto theft cases we had, our thought is, let's put that position back into patrolling or the detective bureau. They can work any case we want, and we save money. So I think that's one of the important things we're underscoring here with the entire citywide budget, is the importance of looking at everything and how do we do things differently. It might sound, initially it sounds counterintuitive to think we're not going to take this grant and it's going to save us money and give us more flexibility, but that is the case. And I think we've been doing that over the last several years, and Phil Carwatt gave a presentation on recycling a few weeks ago, looking at the way to change that to save money. We've done that with the city attorney's office, the controller, and economic development. And one other thing I wanted to mention is because this question I think I was had copied council on and talked to Councilman Tibbs about a little bit, is cemeteries. We're always looking at ways to do things differently. Our cemeteries funds are an endowment fund, as you're all aware, and that principle cannot be touched. Well, everybody may not be aware of it, but that is the fact. It's in an endowment fund. It's governed by state law and the city charter, so we can't touch the principle. I have a meeting tomorrow with the custodians to look at more active management of the cemetery endowment fund. That is likely under projections to generate another $55,000 for cemeteries. And if you think of it in the total budget for cemeteries, that's about 7.5% of the expenditures there. So we're always trying to look at doing things differently, and Chris is going to talk about some effects of changing if we don't get a grant, or how we'll look at doing that. But always, I think, keep in mind that with this presentation, even if we get the SAFER grant, I think it's incumbent upon us to look at the next 2 years. How are we going to change the way that we provide that service? So it would give us a cushion. The likelihood, I think, of getting that grant 3 years in a row is fairly slim. So keep that in mind as we go through with all the presentations. And the Chief and I have already talked about that going forward. How do you look at fire service, and what changes can you make, even if we are successful in this grant? So, Chief, you can go ahead with your presentation.
Right. Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager. I'm going to briefly I'll go over our current SAFER grant. I'll go over what we've done moving forward with the future SAFER grant application, kind of how we're going to transition, and actually what the effects would be for if we're successful and unsuccessful with the grant. Excuse me. Right. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, thank you. So the current grant the current grant award was $2,317,587. That funded 15 firefighter positions for 2 years. That was fiscal year 13-14 and 14-15. That prevented the layoff of 15 firefighters, and that current grant performance period ends June 30th of 2015. So what has SAFER done for the city of Saginaw? It has allowed the fire department to retain 15 firefighters who faced imminent layoff. It provided us an opportunity to implement a new operational model and adjust internal procedures, which maintained service levels and provided improved efficiencies and reduced costs. Fire department employees have taken on additional roles and responsibilities, and fire department overtime expenses have been substantially reduced. The Saginaw Fire Department is a lean organization. 94% of all sworn firefighters are actively engaged in firefighting activities. The fire chief, training safety officer, and fire marshal are the only sworn members who do not regularly engage in firefighting activities. They do, however, respond to incidents in a support role. Saginaw Fire Department has only one part-time civilian clerical employee. Added clerical functions have been taken on by sworn members. Example would be we've taken on payroll internally with our sworn staff. Safer funding provided sufficient personnel to allow the Saginaw Fire Department the opportunity to implement new community service programs and life safety initiatives. We've had a new level of participation and engagement with Saginaw's neighborhood associations, civic organizations, and citizens. It allowed us to complete the installation of 10,000 smoke detectors in Saginaw homes. Saginaw Fire Department currently has 11 firefighters who are funded through SAFER grant funds. The current level of SAFER employees is reflective of the promotion of the fire chief, the resignation, separation, or retirement of 3 fire department employees. Based on seniority, as openings have occurred, SAFER funded employees have been shifted out of SAFER funding and into public safety millage and general funds. Attempts were made to fill the vacancies, however, the eligible list was exhausted. A new hiring list is currently in the process of being created. The written exam has been completed. Oral interviews are currently underway, and physical agility test is set to be completed the first week of June. Due to the vacancies within a SAFER funded group of employees, unused funds will exist at the end of the SAFER grant performance period. The fire department plans to submit a request to FEMA to extend our performance period to allow us to exhaust all awarded SAFER funds. It is projected that there will be sufficient unused SAFER funds available to fund our remaining SAFER employees for up to 3 months. A new SAFER grant. March 6, 2015, Saginaw Fire Department submitted a grant application for a new SAFER grant. The grant request was for $2,017,146 to fund 13 firefighters for 2 years. The grant award announcement period is June 1st, 2015 through September 30th, 2015. So why did we only apply for 13 positions? In February of 2015, 13 layoff notices were issued to 13 employees who were SAFER funded at that time. The layoffs will be effective June 30th, 2015, which is the end of the current SAFER grant performance period and the end of the current fiscal year. Within the SAFER grant program, grant requests involving employees who face imminent layoff receive priority. We are very optimistic but cannot predict if we will be successful with this grant. The Saginaw Fire Department grant team, working closely with the Office of Management and Budget, wrote and submitted an excellent grant application. The application submitted clearly outlined the Saginaw Fire Department's need for SAFER funding and the impact it will have on the city of Saginaw. The application submitted will provide us the best opportunity possible to receive 2 more years of SAFER funding. So what will happen if we receive a new grant? Current service levels will be maintained. All initiatives and new programs will continue. Personnel vacancies will be filled from the eligible list currently being created. We will continue to explore all options available to further reduce and eliminate our dependence on future SAFER funding. What will happen if we do not receive a new grant? Service levels will be reduced. 2 of Saginaw's 4 fire stations will be closed. The stations that will close will be station number 3 at 1602 Hess and station number 4 at 2208 State Street. What is the impact of closing 2 fire stations? Response times will increase in the areas of the station closures. The current geographic location of Saginaw's 4 current fire stations provides excellent service coverage. National Fire Protection Association standards recommend that the first arriving engine company arrives on scene of a structure fire within 4 minutes, 90% of the time. The maps up below or up above represent, on the left is the current 4-minute response coverage. These are calculated, done through a model. And the image on the right shows you what the 4-minute coverage will be with 2 fire stations. Fire spread versus time. there are many variables and calculations to consider when determining the rate of fire growth in a structure fire. The rule of thumb in the fire service is that fire doubles in size every 60 seconds. A timely response, adequate personnel and equipment, and the application of good fireground tactics are critical for the rescue of fire victims and reduction of fire losses. The callback of off-duty personnel and mutual aid will be utilized when additional resources are needed. However, neither of these approaches have a significant impact on the initial timely response and deployment of resources and equipment. Mutual aid cannot be relied on as an everyday supplement to reduce fire department staffing. What will be the effect on the community? Increased response times will impact the fire department's ability to effect rescues and limit fire losses in some areas of the city. To protect the safety of our remaining firefighters, fireground strategies and tactics will be adjusted on some incidents to account for the reduced number of personnel. Defensive tactics will be employed with greater frequency, which will negatively impact our ability to reduce the damage to community. Fire department services will be reevaluated. Some non-fire suppression services will be reduced or eliminated based on available staffing. Examples may include responses to motor vehicle accidents, participation in community functions, fire safety initiatives such as the smoke detector installation program, and fire safety presentations. What is the reduction of personnel? What's the effect on the fire department? The reduced number of fire department employees will increase the workload and strain on each member. On the left, you'll see what our current staffing is on the structure fire. Current pro call, we have 13 members on scene. That's based on 3 engines, 1 ladder truck, and 1 incident commander, responding from 4 stations. On the right, you'll see what the reduced staffing will look like. We'll respond 1 command vehicle with an incident commander, 1 ladder truck with 4 personnel, 1 engine with 4 personnel. That'll put a total of 9 personnel on scene. Firefighting is a physically demanding, labor-intensive occupation. Saginaw Fire Department is a very busy fire department with an average of 193 structure fires per year over the last 3 years. The firefighters that will be laid off without safer funding will be our youngest members. Without safer funding, with the reduction of personnel, the average firefighter's age on the department will rise to approximately 45 years old. A smaller, older workforce will likely result in an increase in firefighter injuries. All possible safety measures will be employed, however, due to the physical demands of the job and the high volume of fire incidents that we respond to, all injuries cannot be prevented. Incident commanders will adjust their strategies and tactics to keep firefighter safety a primary focus. Just in summary, current SAFER grant funding, 15 firefighters will expire June 30th, 2015. Saginaw Fire Department has applied for a new SAFER grant totaling $2,017,145 to fund 13 firefighters for 2 years. The announcement period for SAFER grant is June 1st through September 30th of this year. Since we may not have notification regarding our SAFER grant application by the beginning of the new fiscal year, July 1st, we will request an extension on the performance period for our current grant. We will use unused funds from the current grant to fund our current SAFER employees for up to 3 months or until we receive official notice on the outcome of our new SAFER grant request. If we are successful in attaining a new SAFER grant, we will retain our current SAFER firefighters and fill any vacancies that have occurred. Fire protection services will be maintained, and the citizens of Saginaw will see no decrease in the level of services provided. If we are successful in attaining a new SAFER grant, we will continue to increase our efficiencies and explore strategies to improve our long-term sustainability and further reduce or eliminate our future dependence on SAFER funding. If we are not successful in obtaining a new SAFER grant, 2 fire stations will be closed to account for a reduction of firefighters. Response times will increase, and our ability to provide adequate fire protection and life safety protection in some areas of cities will be impacted. Questions?
Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Thanks for the good news, Chief. It's just what it is, right?
Yes.
City manager already said that it's unlikely or likely
No, for a third,
if we apply for a third term.
Second one, I think, is
far more likely than if you applied for a third term. I think when you look at a grant like this, they're looking for some sort of improvement where you don't need to have a dependence on the grant forever. And then you never know how much funding there's going to be there. So as Chief mentioned, if we get the grant again, then we'll hope to make some changes and look at efficiencies and perhaps decrease the force over that at the end of that period so that we wouldn't have to even apply for it again. That would be one of our goals. One additional comment I guess I would make is that we're applying for 13 positions. This time the general fund is picking up 2 positions from that grant. So we don't have the decrease that we were planning. If you remember 2 years ago when the police department was decreased, it was 15 firefighters, and that's the grant we applied for. We're funding 2 positions from the general fund from the savings that we have in overtime, that the changes that Chief and the union had made. We allocated 2 positions to come out of those savings, which is somewhere around $160,000 to $180,000, depending on overtime and the level of the employee.
Okay. If we get the SAFER grant, we're going to keep those other 2 fire stations open, right?
Correct.
And do we need any kind of major capital outlays for those stations in the next year?
I don't foresee anything with the next year. We've taken a look at it mechanically and systems-wise, we're okay. The guys and gals do a lot of work around the stations to keep things running. I mean, it's their home away from home. They do a great job of doing a day-to-day maintenance. So I don't foresee any major items on the near future.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Oh, I had a question, but Councilman Clark.
Councilman Clark, go ahead. You are optimistic, I take it, that the extension will be granted for the approximate 3 months.
I'm optimistic. We've made contact with FEMA, laid out what we're looking to do, and they're working with us, and we should be getting the application in relatively soon. So
My question then is, actually I got a follow-up, but the first question is, if that is not granted, if the extension is not granted, where are we then, what contingencies are in place?
Sure. Well, the employees wouldn't be, into the new fiscal year, they wouldn't be covered. There'd be no funding for those employees. So the layoffs would become effective July 1st.
So what you're talking, everything would take effect July 1st?
Yes.
All right.
If in the absence of an extension
Right.
and a new grant.
Second question has to do with I'm sure that the department and the administration has submitted a really strong grant request. But the question is there anything more that can be done, or is it totally dependent on what's already submitted?
Well, I've looked at everything possible. I knew once we submitted the grant, that wasn't the end of it. So we have been out. We've gotten letters of support from all the legislators, our state senators, U.S. senator. Everybody possible has really jumped on board and helped us out and submitted their support.
Good.
So I think with the package that was submitted and the friends and legislators that we have in support, it gives us our best chance.
Good. All right, thank you. Councilman Tibbs?
I mean, I guess I was just looking at the worst-case scenario. You said these buildings, Fire Station 4 and, I'm sorry, 3 and 4, or 2 and 3, will be closed.
3 and 4.
3 and 4?
Yes.
Are these buildings, are they going to be of any use at all, or going to just be vacant? Or, I mean, I guess I'm concerned about the upkeep and things.
In short term, they'd be vacant. I would hope that we'd be able to do something with them to take them off of our, reduce our expenses.
It would be vacant. We looked at previous years when we were looking at large decreases in the general fund. We looked at the actual cost to keep a building open and not shutter it, and didn't save a lot to completely shutter it, so you would have to keep the heat
at a certain level and the water on, but I think we would probably be interested in keeping those open, and whether you turn it into some kind of a community center or the fire service uses it for something else. We do have one station now that was closed at one time, and the police department, I believe, uses that for storage. So I'm sure that we would have a use for the building, whether the fire service uses it or another city department. And I don't think we put savings in the budget for shuttering the building. So this current budget would have money there to keep the buildings for this fiscal year.
Would logistically the two remaining fire stations be able to house, I guess, the fire engines that would, I guess, come from the two closed?
We have limited space available. We're working on plans right now to be able to accommodate those apparatus, because you're talking, we have a hazardous material unit we need to move. We have 2 engines over at Station 3 would have to be allowed, so I certainly wouldn't want to leave them in the empty buildings. You know, we'd have to have them within our occupied buildings, so.
And I guess comparatively, you calculate the response time to be 4 minutes if it should close?
I'm sorry?
It was a calculated 4-minute response coverage. Is that?
That's with the current,
Okay.
what the graphic shows with the current response. What I'm saying is that those areas that close, you're likely to see probably a 2 to 3 minute increase in times, probably closer to 4 from that 4 minutes, so.
And I guess my question was, I think I read somewhere where that's calculated amongst the various fire departments across the state. I mean, where would that put us? Like, for example, I'm just say like Birmingham, Michigan, they have an average response time of like 4 minutes, and and say like Kalamazoo, the average response time is 6. I mean, then
Well, I can tell you our average response time right now is 4 minutes and 22 seconds. Last year, for fiscal year, we were 4:18. That's a very good response time. You know, I spoke about fire development and the effects of it. So if you calculate, you know, every minute fire tends to double. I think what's important to know is just what a good job your fire department does right now. The statistic I track pretty closely is what fires we can find to remove origin. Now, in the fire world, we want to stop them as soon as we can. So it's a tracking mechanism. Last year, we can find 49% of the fires we went to the room of origin. That's saving all the property, you know, everything else. So that's a very good mark. I went back and I looked at the numbers. If I pull away 2 fire stations, that actually brings it down about 25%. That's gonna, because you can draw the conclusion that without that 4-minute response, you're not gonna have that confined to room of origin fire. So.
Chief and I had talked about response times as well, and I think it isn't always the best way to look at it to compare to other cities, just because they might not be using the same criteria that Chief is using for our fire department. For instance, you might say your response time is X because you had people on the scene, but the way the city's fire department is run, they have to have a certain number of people on the scene to actually start fighting the fire. So if they ran a 1-person truck out there, you could really impact what your response time is. So I think the way that Chief measured is the preferred way to do it. I mean, as far as I'm concerned.
We put a functional unit, equipment, personnel on scene in 4 minutes. We're able to do something with it. We're just not getting there. You know, you need bodies. We operate under 2 in, 2 out. If we send 2 people in, we have to have 2 people ready to go, you know, for rescue. So the key to it is a timely response and getting the equipment and personnel there that you can do something with.
Thank you, Chief.
How many firefighters do we have right now?
We are at 47.
So here,
We are-
and that's a good help. We're going for the good side that we can get what we need to get. We would be minus 13. Response time is going to be shorter. Some of the activities that were going on will be discontinued.
Correct.
Okay.
The response times will be increased, I think.
No, I'm sorry, the
Okay.
response time will be increased.
Right,
Okay,
right.
so I heard you mention the smoke detectors and all of that?
Right.
Okay, all of that, all of the little luxuries or perks that we got, we will probably lose them.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic program, but it was very labor intensive. We need to have the personnel to be able to do that. As much as we'd love to do it, you know, with limited personnel, it's gonna be difficult to accomplish that kind of a program.
How many people does each fire station hold if we close down?
If you close down, you'll have 4 personnel assigned to Station 2, 4 personnel assigned to Station 1, and a battalion chief assigned to Station 1.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Managers, that concludes your presentations for at this point? Yes. Okay. Then this concludes our Committee of the Whole meeting. Gracious Father, we thank you for this opportunity that we have to be here and to serve our citizens of Saginaw. Be with us tonight as we deliberate the business of the city. We ask you to be with all our city employees, our staff, and council members here as we deliberate tonight. We ask for special thoughts on Councilman Larry Caloris as he heals, and our thoughts are with him also. We ask this in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Thank you. Councilman Fitzpatrick. Councilman Tibbs. Councilwoman Bench. Mayor Pro Tem O'Neill. Councilman Caloris is pre-excused. Councilwoman Moore. Councilman Balls. Councilman Clark.
Present.
Mayor Browning.
Present.
We have 8 members present and 1 absent.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to remind the audience to, during the council meeting, to remain quiet and refrain from speaking, cheering, booing, or rude or obnoxious behavior. Also, this is a good time to check your cell phones and make sure that they are on silence for us. And I will continue if I see Betty back there. Is she back there now? Thank you. Okay, that's a little concerned. So, very good. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Mayor, we are at announcements. I do have a couple this evening. The waste collection convenience station will be open this Saturday, which is May 9th, to the city residents for disposal of items such as your building materials. And also, the city has job opportunities for temporary positions for the Celebration Park attendants and coordinators. Applications are available at the Human Resources Office during regular business hours or on the city website at www.saginaw-mi.com under the Find a Job link. The park is open from Memorial Day through Labor Day. Applications accepted until the positions are filled. Mayor, that takes us to proclamations. We have 2 this evening. And our first proclamation is to the Saginaw Police Department designating May 7th, 2015 as Police Memorial Day. And with us this evening, we have Anthony Tekanui, Tenuyuki, to receive the proclamation.
Okay, Officer Tenuyuki, would you step up there? It's with great honor I get to read this proclamation, reference our Police Memorial Day. And when I'm finished with this one, just remain there at the podium because we have a second one for you. So, okay. City of Saginaw proclamation, whereas the courageous men and women of the Saginaw Police Department should be honored for the discipline and distinction they show in preserving the rights, freedom, and safety of all citizens of Saginaw. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, hazards, responsibilities, and sacrifices of these brave officers,
as they serve our community. And whereas it is difficult to completely show our true appreciation for the service the men and women provide for the community, these brave officers often put their lives on the line to protect our citizens, sometimes making the ultimate sacrifice. And whereas the President of the United States and Congress has designated May 11th through the 15th, 2015 as National Police Week to salute the men and women who do the difficult, dangerous, and often thankless work of safeguarding our communities. During this time, we celebrate those who protect and serve us every minute of every day. And whereas on Thursday, May 7th, 2015, the City of Saginaw will recognize the members of our police force and pay tribute to those officers who have laid their lives down in the performance of their duties. On this day, we will honor law enforcement officers, both past and present, by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities, have rendered a dedicated service to the residents of the City of Saginaw. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Dennis D. Browning, on behalf of my fellow councilmen, do hereby proclaim May 7, 2015, as Police Memorial Day in the City of Saginaw, and urge all citizens to observe this day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice to their community or have become disabled in the performance of duties. I further encourage schools, businesses, religious institutions, service organizations, and the community as a whole to recognize and pay respects to the survivors of our fallen heroes. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Saginaw to be affixed this 4th day of May in the year of our Lord 2015. Signed, Dennis D. Browning, Mayor. Councilpersons Amos O'Neill, Mayor Pro Tem, Michael D. Balls, Annie Bench, Larry Caloris, Daniel Fitzpatrick, Floyd Clark, Brenda F. Moore, and Damon L. Tibbs, and Timothy Morales, City Manager. And this Thursday, we will have a service at the Temple Theater. I think it's Thursday morning, 10 o'clock, I believe it is. So with that. Now, Officer Tenayuki, I have a second one here to read, a proclamation, and it's with great honor and pride that I get to read this. Because many years ago, when you were a young rookie, and it's I'm at the point where I can still say that, I guess. I've had the privilege of personally seeing you in action on the police department. I'm so proud of everything you've done. So this proclamation is presented to you, Officer Tenayuki, and it reads as follows. Whereas law enforcement officers in the City of Saginaw carry a tremendous responsibility to protect our citizens. They fulfill this responsibility diligently and with courage and commitment, often placing themselves in harm's way. And whereas each year one exemplary individual from the Saginaw Police Department is honored for the courage, discipline, and the distinction they show in preserving the rights, freedom, and safety of the citizens of Saginaw. And whereas Officer Anthony Tenayuki has earned the honor of 2015 Police Officer of the Year for his thorough and proactive approach to policing and investigations. Officer Tenayuki is known for going the extra mile to ensure the innocent are protected and the citizens of Saginaw is safe, and the City of Saginaw is safe for its citizens. And whereas through the perseverance of Officer Tenayuki and others like him in the Saginaw Police Department, we are experiencing a drastic reduction in violent crime in the City of Saginaw. Officer Anthony Tenayuki demonstrates hard work and dedication every day. He truly is an asset to the Saginaw Police Department and the citizens he serves. Now therefore be resolved that I, Dennis D. Browning, Mayor of the City of Saginaw, hereby urge all citizens of Saginaw to recognize, honor, and celebrate the outstanding achievements and contributions that Saginaw Police Officer Anthony Tenayuki has made to the City of Saginaw. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Saginaw to be affixed this 4th day of May in the year of our Lord 2015. Signed, Dennis D. Browning, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Amos O'Neill. Council members Michael D. Balls, Annie Bench, Larry Caloris, Daniel Fitzpatrick, Floyd Clock, Brenda F. Moore, and Damon L. Tibbs, Timothy Morales, City Manager. Congratulations, Officer Tenayuki. You want to come forward and receive these for us? The special guest that you have with us today.
Sure. I'd like to first say good evening to Mayor Browning. Good evening to the council members. Mr. Morales, Ms. Luss, good evening to you folks. With me today, I actually brought my wife, Michelle, and my 2 kids. This is Eliana, and this is Aiden.
Very nice.
They're 6 and 8 years old there. They love Daddy. They love what Daddy does for a living, and I'm proud of that also. What I'd like to say is just thank you for allowing me to accept these on behalf of the Saginaw Police Department. I just fortunately happen to be the humble person to receive it this year. We work as a team at Saginaw PD. Right now it's a tough time being a police officer, but we're going to continue to be professional and be smart with our decisions and try to make sure the citizens are proud of us and are happy to have us represent them. So once again, I'm not going to speak too much. I would just like to say I'm very, very honored to receive this, very honored. Once again, I'd like to thank you folks. That's about all I have to say. So I want to say thank you again.
Thank you. I'll tell you, thank you very much.
Mayor, your next order of business is personal appearances.
And before personal appearances, let me just remind the speakers, if you had signed up before 1 o'clock today, the speaker is limited to 3 minutes. The purpose of a personal appearance is to address council. Speakers shall address their remarks to the council as a whole. Remarks shall not be addressed to individual council members, city staff, or the audience. Speakers may ask general questions about the topic of their presentation. All questions will be referred to the city staff for appropriate follow-up. Speakers shall not ask questions of specific council members. Purpose of a city council meeting is to discuss city business and not to deal with individual personalities. Personal abusive attacks, slanderous or profane remarks about any person shall not be permitted. Violation of these rules will be considered a breach of order, in which the speaker's appearance will be terminated. Refusal to yield the floor will be considered a breach of peace and subject to violator to removal from the council chambers. And Madam Clerk, with that,
Our first speaker this evening is Johnny Sanders. I didn't either. Thank you. Our next speaker is Salim Manan.
Honorable Mayor, City Manager, Attorney, Council members, citizens of Saginaw. My name is Salim Manan, and I'm a long-term citizen of Saginaw, born in Detroit, always been in Michigan. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to be here, and thank you also for your commitment to our city. I realize the work that you guys do, and I appreciate it so much, and some of you I've worked with very personally. Thank you so much for what you do for our city. I'm compelled to come here today. You know, I don't come often, but sometimes I'm compelled. I want to begin with something that you may not think is connected, but is connected. And that is, this book is called the Financial Crisis Inquiry Report. And it was put out by the federal government. And it outlined what happened in 2008. What it begins by saying is that when the downfall took place, more than 26 million Americans were out of work. About 4 million families lost their homes to foreclosure. Another 4.5 million have slipped into foreclosure process or are seriously behind on their mortgage payment. Nearly 11 trillion in household wealth had vanished. Retirement accounts, life savings swept away, businesses large and small were all sunk or felt the sting of a deep recession. The trading ground to a halt. The stock market plummeted. The economy plunged into a deep recession. Lehman Brothers, AGI fell and had to have government assistance. Now, why is it important to have this, to say this? I'm looking for an opportunity where Michigan begins to come back. There are too many good signs now to ignore that things aren't moving forward. It began with the President Obama saving the automobile industry in 2008 and providing them with $80 billion, a company I work for, which had been a successful business for 75 years. Number one auto producer, was $80 billion in the hole, and the leadership went on a private jet to ask the government to help them. And President Obama responded. That laid the foundation for this state to begin to come back. We almost lost Buick, Garber, during that period, one of the oldest companies around, and they're still here and they're thriving because of that move. That laid the foundation for all the other things that have happened. And since that time, the approval of the bridge from Canada to Detroit, the building of the stadium for the Red Wings, all the other investments that's taking place. Now, I'm here to talk about why it's important to support Proposition 1, Proposal 1, and what it would do for our state. No, I don't like it, but I'm a diplomat. I want to be a statesman. You cannot always get what you want. I'm sorry. But thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Willie Humphrey. I do not see him. Our next speaker is Monique Lamar Sylvia. Our next speaker is Monique Sylvia. Can't see her either. Let's try Alonda Sylvia. Our next speaker is Wayne Paquette.
Greetings, Mayor Browning, and council members. My name is Wayne Paquette. I was raised in this city, graduated from Saginaw High. I come to you today to bring awareness to an industrial site. TRW, Chevrolet, Adelphi. I worked there for 34 and a half years. I'm currently the retirees chairman for Local 467. Our local represented those people for 77 years at that location. Again, 1 year ago, Valentine's Day, TRW shut down. They were just renting the facility. Saginaw lost 600 good-paying jobs, but they also lost the income tax of 600 people. The landlords of the property is IRG Realty in California. They pay the city of Saginaw $126,000 a year in property taxes. If that site was to be leveled, they'll only pay on 71 acres. There's currently 683,000 square feet of manufacturing space available to Saginaw. Remember Buick City, gone, leveled. Pontiac Motor, AC Complex, Malleable Iron. So as an interested citizen of Saginaw, I did some investigation, and there was a party that didn't want to go north of Flint. So there's actually people that are interested if the city would somehow could reach these people. Now, there's I guess I would suggest the city look at this as one of the last jewels of the automobile industry. This would be a huge loss to the city of Saginaw if this site was somehow torn down. It's in good shape, and even the real estate agent has that listed as a jewel. But maybe with some federal and state programs, maybe if the city of Saginaw looked, maybe they could assist in bringing some jobs back, which would sure be good for Saginaw. That's basically all I had, was to try to bring awareness to the council. This might be something that you would want to think about, because When they tore down Plant 2, there was a big plant with the ventilators. That wasn't marketed very long, and the owners in California leveled that. There wasn't anything wrong with that building except it really needed a drop ceiling because it was so high. But these facilities can disappear very quickly, which they have all over the state, and age doesn't seem to have any effect on it. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Speaker is David Connor. Okay. Our final speaker tonight is Henry Sanchez.
Mr. Mayor, council members, how y'all doing? I come here on behalf of being harassed by Scenic. And they wrote me tickets on licensed and insured automobiles. Then they promised me to come over there, to come by the shop today to correct it, and they didn't show up. Now they make me pay for the license, and he told me plain and straight that he ain't gonna sign it for my mechanic, for my business license for the state of Michigan. What I paid for it today, and he told me plain and straight that he ain't gonna sign it. So I want to know why I'm being arrested and what can I do. That's basically all of it.
Council.
Okay, and to remind council members, you have a 5-minute limit on your comments. And tonight, we will begin with Mayor Pro Tem, Amos O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to everyone. I'd like to start off by expressing my concern and deep appreciation for our colleague who was not here with us being ill. So our thoughts and our prayers are with Councilman Colores. Just want to make that comment. Also, I want to congratulate our Officer of the Year. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce your name. I know I would just mess it up. So congratulations to you. I've had several encounters with you. You've always been professional and very community-minded, so I want to appreciate you for that. And to your family and your wife, your daughter, and your son, congratulations to you. I really appreciate your comment in your remarks in terms of, as you said, I'm paraphrasing, you want to make the citizens proud of the office of the police officers here in the city. As we look around the country, and all of us have seen the issues relative to law enforcement, but I appreciate you saying that and making that bold statement, and just hope that it continues to be reflective here locally with our encounters with the public. That's very, very important. Also, like to express appreciation to all of our speakers, particularly Mr. Celine and Mr. Piguet. I messed that one up too. But, really, both of you are right on the money. And as we look around the country and see the climate in our community, particularly urban communities, where we've been decimated by automotive industry for us, and those areas are just dormant. And I would really be interested to see, and I know Councilman Balls is probably connected to this, but interested to see if we could get together with some folks like yourself to come up with some type of task force to look at these opportunities, some ingenuity, and really intuitive thinking, processing to see what options are out there. This is another time for us, all of us as elected officials, to call upon the federal government to say, hey, our urban communities need support. We've been very proactive in, supporting business, providing tax breaks for businesses to develop, et cetera. But we also have to make sure we take care and work with the folks who live in the neighborhoods, in the communities. So that's very, very important. So I think that's something we need to look at. Mr. Manager, I'm not sure if you're talking to folks about potential developments of some of those properties that have been left dormant. But I think with the climate as it is, I would really hope that we could aggressively, tap the resources of some of the veterans who've been in the automobile industry for years and have good insight, and just have some discussion. If it's a matter of, forming some type of committee, Councilman Balls, you've got a lot of experience in General Motors and working. I mean, I think we really should pursue that and see if we could bring some additional resources to bear to create some jobs for our community. So again, I agree that this is a good time, and this is a very sensitive time as well. So I think this is an opportunity for us. Again, Saginaw has been on a cutting edge in terms of being proactive in many ways as you look around the state and see how many of our counterparts have wrestled with huge deficits where they had to have emergency managers come in, make drastic cuts. But we've made some tough decisions in the past that knock on wood, that we can say that we're currently in the black. We do have some tough decisions ahead of us, though, as we look at our funding streams, our revenue, in terms of tax base, obviously has eroded. So that even affords the urgency to look for tax-generating opportunities to try to supplement those losses that we've sustained over a period of time. So I'm optimistic, and I think with support from the community, again, that's, when you look at, I'll use the example of our young kids, or young adults, being incarcerated at a high rate, being involved in the criminal justice system, those folks are out of the mainstream of contributing to society. So let's tap the resources that we have at our disposal to see if we can get some yield from that for the betterment of our community. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Annie Bench.
Thank you. First and foremost, I'd like to congratulate and thank Officer Teniyuki for his service. Yeah, thanks. I had to just say your last name there. But thank you so much for your service to the city. It is a difficult and challenging job, and I am very proud of all the officers that I know and that we have working for us. So thank you. The only other thing I wanted to mention was the successful Saginaw soup that we had last Wednesday. Congratulations to Ms. Jones and Ms. Franklin, and I know there are several other people, Matt Lane, and thank you to Mr. Miller for the use of the venue. It was very well attended. I think at one point there was even a quorum of council members. We weren't talking to one another, or just we don't socialize or anything like that with each other. But it was nice to see. There were a lot of staff members there. We had some fantastic presentations that were done. Our winners were 11 and 8-year-old brothers who are the CEOs of their own company, which is just phenomenal. And in addition to that, the other ideas were just really good. We also, and I wanted to mention, I think it's Terry Collier from Scenic. He's one of our employees, and in addition to the fact that it was our staff that put this together and pulled it off so well, it was really nice to see one of our own employees up there presenting an idea, and it was an excellent idea, and I certainly hope that he continues pursuing making it come to fruition. But it was just a great event, and it was a very nice time, and I look forward to us doing it again, and thank you guys. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilman Tibbs.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, residents, for attending. Officer Teniyuki, as prosecutor, we worked closely on several cases, and you always do a good job, very professional. You're one of officers that the person who arrested actually apologized afterwards, and they tell me to tell you that, sorry for having you come to court, and they always say you treated them fairly, and you always do a good job. Our speakers, thank you for coming and making us aware of the situation. Mr. Manning, thank you for your hard work in the neighborhood associations and educating us about Proposal 1. Mr. Paget, thank you for keeping that issue with us in the forefront. That's one more thing we don't need around here is a big vacant property, and it's definitely something we should keep in front of our mind. There was a couple of organizations that did a great job recently by organizing and try to share some of the issues that they see Saginaw having and try to create some creative solutions for these issues. There's an organization with the acronym of LEAD, LLEAD, the Latino Leaders for Advancement of Advocacy and Development. They had a one-day seminar with 3 different workshops, and they talked about various issues. There was another organization that attended a 2-day workshop, Coalition of Concerned Residents, and they shared survey results from our middle school and high school students, and the 2 biggest issues were violence and substance abuse. And that was something the LEAD organization also talked about, and I think maybe the city and these 2 organizations can work together to address some of these issues. Another event that I attended was the 3rd annual Pay It Forward luncheon. It was hosted by Kingdom Life Ministries Women's Department. Pastor Rufus Bradley was the keynote speaker, and the purpose of that organization was to pay it forward between each organization, to see how one organization can support another. And for example, One Week, One Street was there, and Pastor Bradley told that organization what they can do to assist them, and vice versa. And so it was just pledging support amongst each other. And it was just a good event. I'm glad to see the activity amongst our leaders in the community and our residents, and I hope that whatever I can do to help, I'm there to do that, and just keep up the good work. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Mayor, in the interest of saving my voice, I'll try and keep it brief. I do want to congratulate Officer Tenyuki, and boy, it's great to see your family here too. To know you are a good family man, and that's really the majority of what we've got here in this city, is in both the police and the fire department are good family men and women, and that's means a lot. It really does. Thank you. And speaking of the fire department, we just heard from them as far as our in our meeting of the whole regarding our budget, which we have every year, and we'll be having that again at the next, how many meetings, Mr. Manager? Next 2?
The next meeting is the regular meeting beginning at 5 o'clock, and we won't have a committee of the whole about it, but we'll have the budget on the agenda.
Okay. You know, that's an opportunity for citizens to really learn a lot about the funding and the budget that goes into running the city and providing the services like the fire department and the police department and the streets, the water department. It's sobering, and I think it can educate people into, well, you know, I guess we have it pretty good in some ways, because we have such a great staff that's trying to save the money and to work with just the money that we're given. But folks, something's got to give, and you know, I would like to see us use and I think we are using every avenue we can. But you know, when we get asked as city council people, you know, what can the citizens do? You know, we have to do something about our tax base and something about our property values. I don't know exactly what. The other thing that is big for us is income tax. So if we could just get more, and thank you for bringing that up, both Mr. Paquette and Mr. Mannon. You know, one of the things that we have is we have this group called Saginaw Futures, which works closely with us, and those kinds of opportunities they need to get that in front of them. And they're doing what they can to bring businesses back to Saginaw, but really the more pressure we put on our legislatures and our governor, on our federal government, and on the private sector, probably the most important part, the private sector to bring jobs back into Saginaw, the better we'll be. Mr. Sanchez complained about a business license. If you feel like you're not getting through, hopefully our city manager took that down, and he'll follow through on that complaint and get you an answer. Hopefully it's an answer you can live with. And that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone, as well. I can't help but want to start with our missing council person, Mr. Coloris. So obviously we miss him, and our wishes are with him as he recovers. I do also want to say congratulations to Officer Tenayuki and to his family who are here supporting him today, because it's family that helps all of us support what we do. And Officer Tenayuki, you and your family both are to be commended for your dedication to the police department and the city. So thank you. And speaking of the SPD, the police department, this coming May 7th, while it will be a somber day because it's a remembrance of those who have laid down their lives in service to the city, it is also a proud moment because it helps us reflect on the brave, dedicated service of our public service personnel, both police and fire. Without them, we would not be the city that we would like to be, nor would be the city that we could be, have been and can be in the future. They are the backbone of the protections that we have as citizens of this city. So, as I said, while it will be a somber day, it is still a day of recognition for a police department that we all should be very proud of. I want to mention something, the Cinco de Mayo celebration that was held on Saturday. We attended, my wife and I attended the celebration on Ojibwe Island. It was, I want to recommend or commend and congratulate all those who organized it for having a great event. It was nice to see the celebration. They had a wonderful day compared to the rain they had last year. So it was nice to see it turn out so well. Finally, I want to echo, sort of echo Councilman Fitzpatrick's comments. I'm going, if you think about it, there's an issue that's fallen off the radar of all of us for a while, and that's the tax cap issue. Everything we're facing now when it comes to budget issues is the legacy, in part, of that tax cap. We have lost many, many, many millions of dollars over the last 40 years as a result of that tax cap. We've lost hundreds and hundreds of employees. And if we don't remember the harm that tax cap has done, then none of us are really facing the future, recognizing one of the problems that we have. It isn't the only one. There's certainly been other issues. The 2008 depression, now essentially depression in Michigan, but certainly the problems financially that had hit us, that in and of itself was separate, but we lost a lot of our citizens who have moved out for jobs because of that tax cap. We've lost a lot of businesses because of that tax cap, all of which is now being reflected in the reductions in our tax base and in our income tax receipts. I can't stress enough, we cannot forget that tax cap is killing us, and it will continue to kill us as long as it's in place. Removing it won't solve the problems overnight, no way. It's too far, we're too far gone as a result of the damage it's done. But it would be a start. Whether or not the citizenry would support it, I don't know, but I think they're being very foolish in not supporting repeal of that tax cap. So with that, I want to bring it back in the forefront We all need to be thinking about it. We all need to be aware of it and the harm it's done. And until we address it, you're going to continue to see problems. So with that, Mr. Mayor, it's a downer, but that's a fact. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the citizens for showing up for the city council meeting today and for the families that on the outside is tuning in to find out what's going on in Saginaw. There's a lot of great things going on in Saginaw. I'd like to thank the people for coming and making their comments. Mr. Manan, I respect your comments because I respect you. But I did some studying on this, on that proposal one, and they're going to raise about $1.3 billion per year. The first 2 years, they're going to be paying off previous bonds. The first year, they're going to spend $867 million for previous bonds, and the second year, they're going to spend $467 million for previous bonds. There's money that already rose, already been approved of and been done, but they're going to take that money and give it back. So essentially, the first year, the $800 million will reduce that $1.3 billion down to $500 million to go towards the roads in 2016. And then the following year, only $1 billion of that money will be going towards the roads because they're taking out $467,000. And the law only is 100-word laws, but it triggers another 10 laws that's going to trigger another 1,000 words and other laws that they plan on doing. So it's too much stuff in there that's going on, I think, for us to pass that. And I think that a lot of the stuff is going to hurt the families, that's poor families. I just happened to be in Lansing last week, and I asked some legislators about it, and they're saying they can't do nothing about that. And the city's only going to get 27% of that money going to go to the cities. Another 32% goes to the state, and another 32% go towards the counties. So a lot of that stuff they're generating, I don't think is going to help the city out there much. And I think the city of Saginaw probably only receive, when we do receive any money, probably be about $1 million. So I wasn't happy hearing those legislators tell me that when I was there. You know, sometimes things sound pretty good, but sometimes they don't turn out to be that great for the city. To the other gentleman that came and made the comments, I hope that Mr. Sanchez, that you get your issues taken care of. Anybody that want to do some business in Saginaw, I'm all for it. And hopefully we can iron that out so you can do business here. Talking about that, I attended the Saginaw Soup last week and I was a judge. You know, 6 people was there and they presented their businesses and it all sounded good. You know, it's always good to hear people want to do business in the city of Saginaw, and I was so happy to hear that. And they said that I think it was another 12 to 18 people that wanted to present their businesses, so I guess that'll be getting done later. So I think it was a good time. It's always, like I said, it inspires you to know when people want to come and do something good in the city of Saginaw. And a matter of fact, just talking about that, last week on the 27th of April, Tom Miller Sr. and Jr. attended a board of directors meeting for Wanagas Credit Union that I just happened to be on the board. And we was talking about the H&R neighborhood over there in front of the plant that you was talking about, sir, the Harold and Ray neighborhoods. Pastor Baldwin, who somebody else had just mentioned, the 1 week, 1 street, they're going to do that in end of June. But Wanagas Credit Union took it upon themselves, but we asked our members if they would do something too. So on June the 6th, Wanagas employees and the people that handle our grass, we're going to go down Russ Street and we're going to clean up that area down there. As a matter of fact, I got the board of directors to approve anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000 to help fix up that neighborhood. I talked to Pastor Bourne the other day, Roy Baldwin. He said he didn't have a major sponsor, so Wanagas Credit Union is going to be a major sponsor, and we're going to help those neighborhoods out. If anybody want to come out and help out, please come to Wanagas Credit Union, 7 o'clock, June the 6th. Wear your rough clothes so you can get out there and help out. As a matter of fact, Chief Light had mentioned when he was here about how bad that neighborhood was. That H&R neighborhood, they had over 50 shootings in that neighborhood within a 5-year span. And I think that it went down tremendously because we got people like Pastor Baldwin that's going over there doing the work in that neighborhood. As a matter of fact, some of the Wanagas employees had been there for a long time and they're concerned about that neighborhood. Sometimes they're scared to go to work. But we talked them into going to that neighborhood. So what we're going to do, that Saturday before we go, we're going to go in the neighborhood and pass out ice cream and let everybody know we're going to be there at 7 o'clock the next morning. Our lawn company's going to be there, so we're just going to soften them up a little bit, let them know that we want to help them in their neighborhood. So I think that's a beautiful thing. Like Chief Light had mentioned that in that neighborhood we have some third generation of people who've been criminals in that neighborhood. And I think it's dissipating a little bit. So there's a lot of things that people in the community could do. This is all we're going to get back to being mentors. If you come over there and spend some time with those kids and bring them into your world instead of you going into theirs, you can soften them up a little bit to make them want to be productive members of society. So thanks for letting me make those comments.
Good evening, citizens of Saginaw. First of all, congratulations. I'm not going to try to say your name, but I'm going to congratulate you and your family. It's always nice to see homegrown and to see people that always want to improve the city of Saginaw. For my other speakers, I am 100% behind my fellow councilmen when we say we are trying to improve the city of Saginaw. We do want to see a change. So for the two gentlemen that talked about it, Mr. Celine and Mr. Wayne, I'm not going to mess your last name up either. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem that we do need to get together and try to see what we can come up with. And for the young gentleman who has an issue, I'm sure that the city manager is going to get with you and look into that to see what we can do. We talk about how Saginaw wants to improve. Saginaw can't improve if we keep stopping everybody from doing. So at some point, we're going to have to really look at how we do what we do. And I think that this team that I work with is a great team. We have done. I didn't in a million years. I never thought that I would be sitting up here making major decisions for somebody's life, other than my own. It is a great experience, and trust me, Councilman Tibbs, I know what you're saying. My phone rings 24/7 with trash in the yard. Mr. Coward, Mr. Stemple get calls, and I know they say that's Councilwoman Moore. She called and complaining. But what I do is that if you put yourself out there, the people will. And once we can gain the trust from the community, which we had I felt like we had lost the trust, council people, and I think that we're gaining momentum back. And so we have more people talking to us now, shoving $50 tickets, $200 tickets, $100 tickets in our face. But we are also trying to show up as many places as we can. I just work with a group of fantastic individuals, and for all mothers, I want to wish you happy Mother's Day, and that concludes for me.
Thank you. All right, you can shut the timer off now. It doesn't apply to the mayor. That does. So thank you very much. All right, let me start. Let me start with Mrs. Tenayuki. 51% of that certificate belongs to you. At least 51%. He will tell you that. And a lot of times I tell you, because that's a tough job they do, and they come home, and your support and your children's support, and it's wonderful. It's Tenayuki. I worked with him. I know that. It took me a while, but coming on many years ago when you first come on as a young officer, you've had some wonderful mentors over the years, but they have moved on, and it's your turn. And you now are the mentors for our young officers. In another week, next week or week after, we got some more coming on. And boy, I just couldn't be more proud of them coming on and you being one of those mentors, Tony. You've done a super job with your career. We're very, very proud of you, very proud of your family. Memorial service is also Thursday down at the Temple Theater. And that, too, also was very near and dear to my heart, because I can't tell you how close I came to being on that memorial wall back in 92. These people put their lives out there every day, and you just never know. And so we're very proud of all our officers. And I got to say, they're a lot smarter nowadays, the officers, than we were back then. You know, we had numbers, you know, we had strength in numbers, but the numbers aren't there. So congratulations to you and your family. We're just so proud of you. Okay, let's move on here a little bit. I got Phil Carwatz in the back. Phil, I got some good news for you. I got a letter here that says, Dear Mayor Browning, one of our social study objectives, the students need to brainstorm a local problem and come up with ideas on how to possibly fix that problem. You will find enclosed personal letters written by second graders with problems they came up with for the city of Saginaw, possible solutions. They also are working on letter writing too, though. I hope you find them entertaining at least and maybe helpful. Let me share with you just two of these real quickly. March 25th, 2015, Dear Mayor and City Council, I've been seeing some problems on the roads. They are potholes, and I was hoping you could tell your helpers, can they put some black stuff in it? So, Phil, I want you to know that, and also to the council members here, will you fix our sidewalk? I got a problem. Can you build a new sidewalk or fix the spots, one of the sidewalks, or one or more? Ask the workers to fix the sidewalk, please. I got it. Let's ask the city council to just make a law. And so those are very good from our second graders. When they visited our city council here over a month or a month and a half ago, they were given a homework assignment, and they took this home. It says, Dear Mayor Browning, I think Saginaw is great because, and I picked this one out because this says it all. This is Amante, and he says, Dear Mayor Browning, I think Saginaw is great because it has everything we need. I can't say any more. It's all there. Everything we need is right here. Council members, there's many more of those, and Phil will send those over so your staff can at least see some of those. We just put some of that black stuff in the hole, and we're going to be really good with that. I like that. This afternoon, I was over at Saginaw High. Members of council members, I know you're busy and couldn't make it. Had you made it, you would have got one of these nice T-shirts, Mr. Balls, but you need to be there. You need to be there, sir, to get this. This is our Teen Advisory Council. I am an honorary member, and I just want to read real quickly, Teen Advisory Member, and this is their pledge. Think and respect. I pledge to respect myself and other individuals. Everyone will be treated the way I would like to be treated. I will be true to myself and always carry myself in a positive manner. I will be a role model to my peers and hold myself to a high standard. I will be mature. I will cooperate with others and always follow directions. I will respect and better my environment wherever I go, and I will have an open mind. I will not judge others based on their differences. I will invite others to embrace this message. That is outstanding students with the over at Saginaw High. Each of you got an invite here from Reverend Roy Manning. Please, if you can make that. I am going to be down in Memphis, Tennessee during that time, doing a little barbecuing, so I'm not going to be able to make it. Also, we have a group of students from Saginaw Valley State University with Dr. Thomas. They are going to, 10 of them are going to Tokushima, Japan, part of our sister city program that they have there, and sent a letter to that mayor in response to that. So each of you have an invite here to our Climbing Every Mountain. You should receive one of these also for you. And I think with that, one last thing. Madam Clerk, you in the announcements, I think you missed one for tomorrow. You did, didn't you, Madam Clerk? I am going to yield the remainder of my time, which there probably isn't any. So, Madam Clerk, to redeem yourself, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that opportunity. Tomorrow, reminder, is Election Day. Statewide proposal is on the ballot. Please get out and vote.
Absolutely vote. And I don't mean to disagree with any of my council members, but we could sure use $1 million. And the following year, we could use 1.5, and the following year, we could use more. And I'm going to tell you, that's billions of dollars, and that only goes one way, jobs. That's jobs, jobs, jobs. Doesn't matter if it's in education, doesn't matter if it's in transportation. That is billions of dollars in jobs, which we need. We need those jobs. So thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Mayor, your next order of business is reports from the manager.
Mr. Manager.
Okay, we have a few presentations tonight, and just a couple items before that. I wanted to mention the MML Place Plan program for which Saginaw was selected, presented to the Riverfront Commission, and the Riverfront Commission is going to be the backbone of that steering committee, and I've contacted probably at least a dozen or so other members of the community representing different organizations to be a part of that steering committee as well. So if there's any other council members that want to work on that, just let me know. And they're still working on the first kickoff date for the meeting, but I can forward that to council when we get the information. Another meeting that we started doing, a group that was put together a few years ago that does, the goal is community trust and working with public safety. It's called Advocates and Leaders for Police and Community Trust. It's an ALPAC meeting. We have it every Friday. Councilman Braddock used to be on that committee when he was on council. We haven't had a regular council member attend that meeting since Councilman Braddock was resigned from council. Councilman Tibbs has attended the meeting a few times, but I think partially in his role as a prosecutor, because Prosecutor John McColgan comes to that, and I think he asked Councilman Tibbs to attend it in his stead a few times. But that committee is chaired by Lieutenant Marv Jenkins of the State Police and Mr. Carl Williams, the co-chair. And our last meeting was probably one of the more productive ones because we talked about what issues will bring more community members to the meeting. It's one that you kind of, it's not a town hall meeting, but we want to get people that can take the word back to the community. So Mr. Williams and I will be talking about who maybe we can identify within the community that would be good to attend that. If the attendance, the invitee list is probably 40 or 50 people. We get maybe 10 people attending that meeting, and it includes myself and about 7 police officers. So there's not a lot of other, but it's a great opportunity. So if anyone on council can think of anybody, typically we have U.S. attorneys there from the Department of Justice. The Township Police is active in it, always sends their lieutenant. Chief Ruth is always at the meetings. I attend those. We had the Secret Service there at the last meeting, and several members of the State Police as well. So it's very well attended by law enforcement, and we're trying to think of ways to get more people who are active in that group. So if you think of anybody that might be good to attend, just forward that to me. And we do often talk about jobs and getting jobs for the youth in the city. The clerk mentioned that we have jobs at the city that are at Celebration Park, and last year we did not even fill all of those positions. So if you know recent high school graduates, kids home from college that are looking for jobs, those parks jobs are there for the summer, and we need people to fill them, or even if they're just anyone looking for part-time work, have them contact the Human Resources Office, and those jobs are listed on the city's website as well. Saginaw Soup, a couple people mentioned, and I want to thank the team that put that together. And that's Yolanda Jones, Matt Lane, Tom Miller, who also hosted the first event, Kana Franklin, and Shantae Bibbs, all work on that committee. They did have, I believe, 18 or more applications for that. And they, as Councilman Balls mentioned, they selected 6 that presented. But there are a lot more that can. So they're actually brainstorming on other ideas where they might be able to have a separate kids soup if kids have ideas, or they've got several that are food industry related, so they might look at doing a Saginaw Top Chef type event too. So it was a really good event. We had probably around 70 people attend it. So next time, I think we're looking at, I think the next date we have scheduled is September, but given we have a lot of applications, if we get more, we could have it sooner. But it does take a lot of planning, and it's all extra for city staff, so we'll see how much we want to put on them to plan. But we appreciate what they did. The DDA, we did have a proposal at our last meeting, and Councilwoman Bench is part of that, but at this point, what the board is considering on a temporary basis, Saginaw Future would contract with the DDA to provide the DDA director services. That would not be part of the city's contract. It would be completely separate. They have to have someone that answers to the DDA board. That's what the state law says. So whoever is doing that function needs to be responsive to the board and not necessarily directly the city. However, I think that option does give that continuity there between what we're trying to do at the city and what the DDA, I think, could and should be working on. So I think that's a good option. I talked to our staff that works with HUD, and they feel that that is an alternative that would be acceptable to HUD because of the fact that Saginaw Future does create baseline jobs for low, moderate income, and they keep track of that data. That's one of the things that was an issue for me with the way that the DDA was functioning before. They, as you know from our past council meetings, they receive funding from Block Grant Economic Development. One of the requirements of that is that it needs to be creating moderate to low income jobs in the district, and up until the last report, I think that number was 0. So that's why it was something that I think we needed to address, and trying to come up with a solution that's acceptable to the DDA board as well as the city. So we've had a couple meetings. I've met with the DDA chairman and their executive committee met to talk about that. Still work to be done because the Saginaw Future Board hasn't approved it either, but in the interim, they're going to be helping out with some of the projects that are in the district until we make a final recommendation on that. And I would like to also mention the 13th Annual Saginaw Riverfront Development Commission Beautification Day. That's May 15th from 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. The Riverfront Commission does a great job of organizing this and getting it all set up, and they will let you know that if you cannot attend and clean up, they take donations as well. So that's coming up. If you want more information, you can contact my office. We are constantly marketing those sites. I'll tell you that as well. I don't report back to council on every meeting that I have because it would be too long, but and a number of those discussions are obviously confidential when you're meeting with companies to work on marketing these sites. But the TRW site has been toured but always keep in mind that when we're looking at these industrial sites, our biggest competition always seems to be Texas and Florida. There is no corporate tax in Texas and Florida. So we are at a disadvantage with that. We do have the abatements, but right now we're still at 6% in the state of Michigan, and those states are 0. So that's a challenge for us, but there are parties that are interested in those, and Another one that is marketed very heavily is the former nodular site on Washington that's owned by Racer Trust now as part of the bankruptcy. That one, unlike the previous one we discussed about on the west side, that one is very attractive, I think, to other businesses, to other industrial sites. So hopefully we will get more news about those sites in the future, but I'd ask you to understand that it is something that we are working on quite a bit. It's just not something that we report on when we're having activity there due to the nature of development. And finally, and I'll say we will get a report on any questions that you have. The clerk always takes good notes about that, but we are always willing to help new businesses set up in the city as well, but we always ask that we have ordinances that need to be followed. So you have to follow everything that's set up there to get your business in place, and that's what we ask, and that's where a lot of our enforcement comes in. But we'll have more information for you in the next council packet about those questions. And you probably see a couple of groups that will be presenting to us tonight. The first group is from Spicer, and they are presenting on Davis Road project, which is a project the Saginaw County Road Commission is doing. However, they may be disturbing a couple of our water mains, so Spicer is being engaged to review that plan for us, and they're here to give an update this evening.
Thank you very much, City Manager Morales. My name's Derek Huff. I'm a senior project manager and principal with Spicer Group. I also have Mark Norton, another project manager with Spicer Group, with me here today. We're very excited about this opportunity to work with the City of Saginaw to develop solutions for the Davis Road water system improvements. To give a little bit of background on the project, to this point, the City of Saginaw is supplied with water from the Saginaw Midland Municipal Water Supply Corporation up at Whitestone Point by Au Gray. There are two lines that are going to be impacted by the work that the Road Commission is looking at doing. There's a 36-inch water main that was built in the late 1940s that serves as drinking water supply to the out-of-city customers, so that goes up Davis Road to the north. And then also in the road, there's a 48-inch water main that was built in the late 60s that serves as the raw water supply to the city water treatment plant. There's also a reservoir at Kochville Road and Davis Road with a pump station. There's 180 million gallons of stored raw water at this site as backup or reserve water for the city's system. All these systems are located, all this infrastructure is located under and along Davis Road between Pierce and Tittabawassee roads. So like City Manager Morales had said, the Saginaw County Road Commission has funding to place and reconstruct this section of road in 2018. It's my understanding they're going to be using lots and lots of black stuff to get that road back in ship shape. So that's the plan. So there are some concerns with this work taking place along Davis Road with some very critical City of Saginaw infrastructure takes up that same location. Currently there's only one raw water line from Kochville Reservoir to the water treatment plant. The condition of the 36-inch main that goes back to the north, needs to be addressed in conjunction with this work because it has some maintenance history items. There's also very shallow cover over these pipes. There's anywhere from 2 feet to 5 feet over both of these lines underneath the road. And the road reconstruction will go deeper than 2 feet. It might not be 5 feet, but it'll go down 3 or 4 feet. Therefore, those lines would be exposed, and you typically don't want that with live active lines. So they need to be addressed prior to the Road Commission doing their work. The pumps at the Kochville Reservoir are also currently oversized based on the current demands of the city's system, so that should be addressed at this time as well. So some of the goals of the project, we're looking to improve the reliability of the raw water to the plant, improve supply flexibility and redundancy for the city's system, provide variable flow from the Kochville Reservoir. Right now you just have static pumps that you turn them on. They are 2 speeds, but you can't adjust the amount of flow that comes out. So we'd also allow for blended flow from the reservoir to the plant. Right now, the way that the system functions, all the water either has to go into the reservoir and be pumped out or bypassed altogether. Allowing blending would give you some additional water quality improvements. to allow you to blend reservoir water with the water from Saginaw and Midland. We'd also be providing controls and automation updates to allow all this to be automated and operated remotely for that pump station at Kochville and Davis Road. We'd also have the work constructed prior to the road improvements taking place. So our approach, for this project, as it relates to the transmission main, we'd be evaluating the capacity and sizing of the mains based on the demands and operational scenarios that the city would be seeing. We'd be reviewing alternate locations for these mains to take place. If everyone's driven, Davis Road, it's very tight through there. There's a large ditch to the west. There's not a lot of space for infrastructure to go, so we're really going to have to do our homework to try to find locations for this critical infrastructure. And we're also going to be evaluating solutions as it relates to constructability, capital improvement costs, risks, how this is going to be operated and how it's going to function for the city, because we're going to want to develop, the solution that has the most value and you're going to get the most bang for your buck out of. The approach for the work that has to happen at the Kochville Reservoir, we determine what piping would be reconfigured that would be needed to allow the blending to take place in and out. Determining the pumping characteristics and limitations that we would be looking at for the proposed scenarios. We'd look at the range of pumping that's necessary to supply the water treatment plant direct from Kochville and also with the blended supply. We'd be looking at the variable flow operations, for the different flows and pressures that we'd be considering. We also may have to look at adding or changing pumps at that site to be able to get this to happen in the most effective manner. So in order to do this, we're really going to have a team approach and work very closely with city staff who have a lot of experience operating this infrastructure and have a lot of great ideas with regard to what can happen here. So we're going to be meeting and working with the staff to collaborate and come up with the most valuable and best design scenario. And when we get consensus on that recommended alternative, we'll be developing a study and report that'll delineate all the different topics that need to come out of that for planning for the city. So we'll be preparing that report. Will include the recommended project scope, the construction phasing that needs to happen with timing, cost estimates, and the coordination that has to happen with other entities, as well as operational considerations. And again, the Spicer Group team is very excited for this opportunity to work with the City of Saginaw and to present to the Mayor and City Council and City staff today on this exciting project. Thank you.
Questions? 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 Okay.
Thanks. I forgot to mention that item number 8 on the agenda. So hopefully that addressed any questions that you might have about that item. Our second presenters are regarding item number 14, which is the asset management plan for the stormwater and wastewater system. This is part of a grant that council approved, a resolution authorizing the department to apply for the grant, and the grant was awarded for $1.9 million. So this is the program that is being paid for with the grant. And these are both from Greeley and Hansen.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Drennan, and I'm with Greeley and Hansen. And this is Tom DeLora with Aramosa, and he's part of our team. And just wanted to thank everyone this evening for inviting us here to go over the overview of the asset management plan. For me personally, it is an honor, as I grew up here in the Saginaw area, and my family still lives in the area. And it's nice to be able to get to a point in your career where you have a valuable service and that you can come back and serve the community that has served you so well all these years. So thank you. So for the sewer asset management plan, this is actually becoming a legal requirement in the state of Michigan, and it's going to be added into the MPDS permit when it gets renewed. And this program is going to be completely funded by grant money, and its focus is really on sustainability of your infrastructure, which is the basis for a strong economic environment, environmental system here too in the city. So the grant program itself is called the SAW grant. And SAW stands for Stormwater, Acid Management, and Wastewater. And this program first came out of a proposal back in 2002 in which the residents of the state of Michigan voted in for a strategic water quality initiative. And a couple other projects and programs came out of this, but the legislature ended up setting aside $450 million for this program. And this is to develop acid management programs across the state. Municipalities and authorities are able to apply for up to $2 million. That's the maximum. Saginaw they have applied for it and had received one this fall, and they have no matching requirement. So the grant does require the creation of an asset management plan, and it is an ongoing program. And as soon as the plan gets developed, then it will be reviewed on an annual basis. And it's all about really trying to create a sustainable infrastructure. And Tom's going to go into some of the details.
Thanks, Jennifer. She said, my name is Tom DeLaura. She doesn't know I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, but as a young girl going to school here in Saginaw, she toured your water treatment plant, and at that time was inspired to go into a career as civil engineering, and now she gets to come back and be involved in what you inspired her to do as a young girl. So I think it's a pretty cool story myself, but it's not really shown on the slides. So let's talk about this thing that's called an asset management plan that the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality requires you to do if you'd like their grant money. It's got topics that they ask to see in the plan that I'll give you just a glimpse of what might come ahead. It talks about things called level of service, inventory and condition, criticality and business risk, show me you understand life cycle cost, and show me you understand all of those things so that you can achieve long-term sustainability. And sustainability not only in terms of economic criteria, but also triple bottom line, which is also environmental and social. So all three together, not just financial, environmental, and social. And they would like to see that, as Jennifer said, in an ongoing program. So let's quickly look at what those components are that will be in this asset management plan. Level of service, kind of an interesting term. Most of us are used to always. There's no debate. Things fail, never. What would you like to have it cost? The least possible. Level of service is something that says, look, there are goals and benchmarks and measures that you put in place. If those are the goals you'd like, they have a cost and a responsibility associated with them. So let's start defining those. The most basic one that's in there is, of course, you have to maintain compliance. That's a service level that has to be achieved in an ongoing component. But you also have others. Do I have a document that allows me to communicate those goals and actions to stakeholders? An asset management plan serves as that communications tool. Do I have ways and things that I can do to measure how I'm doing against those goals? The performance measures in an asset management plan allow you to report to the MDEQ and to your stakeholders how you're doing. And lastly, most importantly, level of service lets you pick out those most critical assets, determine which those are, and make sure that you're taking the assets to address those in a timely fashion, and that your goals are realistic. So that's the term level of service that goes in the plan. Next is one that's called an asset registry. It's actually a form of an inventory. It's not it goes more like a spreadsheet. I'll show you a picture on the next slide. It contains down the side all of the assets that you have, grouped according to process or location, wherever they're at, and it begins to define fields across the spreadsheet that lets you to begin to look at level of service and what's critical and not critical. So it captures when did we acquire this asset, how long was it good for, how far is it into that life cycle, how many issues has it had during its life, when do we expect it will need to be replaced, and that data that you put into a data registry, your inventory, begins to help you lay out the plan of what you're going to do in the future. It helps you make the most out of what you own in terms of software, like your maintenance management software. Helps you make the most out of your financial software. You don't buy new. What you use with this data is make the most out of what you own. Helps you identify needs, put your efforts where it's needed most. So if you look at an example of a registry, you see the assets down the left side and those criteria that are captured across the fields, and then you begin to identify in red with numbers that highlight where I need to put my efforts in the coming years. So things can be green, yellow, red, however you want to lay them out. But it becomes a visual tool for you to communicate and talk about. This is why we're putting our efforts where they're needed. One of the factors that's also in an asset management plan is risk and criticality. You take the two axes, which says how likely is something to fail and what's the consequence if it does. You assign numbers to those, working with your staff to say these are those factors. When multiplied together, you can see you want to focus your efforts on those things that have a higher likelihood to fail and a greater impact if they do. And that's where you focus your efforts, your time, and your money. The plan also asks that you look at things in terms of life cycle. It isn't just the cost to acquire something. If we looked at what it costs to buy a car, that's not the only cost we're going to incur during its life. We also have to insure it. We also have to maintain it. Those things add up. So I might look for a car that not only is the least expensive to purchase, but maybe gets the best gas mileage, maybe has the best maintenance record, maybe has the best availability of people who can work on it, and they're not rare or highly expensive. When you combine all those things together, you look at this life cycle, you start at noontime, you work around clockwise on the chart. So you look at the things that are involved in planning for assets, acquiring your assets, financially accounting for your assets. 4 o'clock or so is operating them, maintaining them, eventually doing condition performance and monitoring, which there'll be a lot of under this plan, going out and inspecting, figuring out condition, adding up every part of those costs and accounting for them against the assets so you know truly what the life cycle cost of an asset is. You make intelligent, justified, data-based decisions about when it's time to replace. Maybe you can keep repairing it, but those costs of repair are adding up, so it's maybe more expensive financially to replace it. You have the data in front of you to make those kind of decisions. That's what the DEQ wants to see in your asset management plan. And lastly, before I get to the summation slide, it's a dynamic process. You go through those steps on an ongoing basis. Your inventories, what you find out about condition, what you learn from your operations, what you learn from maintenance, you feed into the program and refine your activities, put your efforts where they return the most on investment. So what you get out of your asset management plan is levels of service that are defined and can be communicated to the public, that are goals that you're working towards with your efforts. You get budgets for capital and O&M expenditures that are justified and based on data. You understand life cycle costs, and they're incorporated into those budgets. You put your efforts where they're really needed. You understand the risk of what happens if you can't get to it or you don't get to it, but you make those decisions with your eyes wide open. You are limited in terms of time and staff and money. How do I make sure I'm being as safe as I can with where I'm spending my time and putting my people? I use the plan as a communications tool for everyone, telling them I'm working to achieve long-term sustainability. That's what the MDEQ hopes to see when they look at your plan. Yes, we feel confident that you're on track to be sustainable, and we know you will continue to do this in an ongoing way. Lastly, just so you know, this project is expected to be completed in the first quarter of 2017. So with that, any questions for either Jennifer or I, we'd be happy to answer.
Council members? Go ahead, Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Yes, how much help and assistance is required? And she just got up because she knew I was going to ask this question, I think. From you, Ms. Kim.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
It's going to require that all of the staff from the director down be involved very intensely throughout this entire project and ongoing. This is something that, although they're steering us in the right direction and making sure that we meet the MDEQ requirements to have this plan in place, we're going to be the ones that have to maintain it ongoing. And when we put out the RFQ process, we told them that we wanted something that was simple and that we could manage. And we didn't want to go out and buy a bunch of canned software that may not be supported in the future. We want to use, we just got BSNA. We started using N4 for our maintenance software. We want a way to integrate and pull all this data together and use the software that we're currently using instead of spending money on programs over and over again. So, yeah, we'll be, all of us, the entire staff, myself, Mr. Carl Watt, Paul Reinch, we'll all be very much involved in this process.
And you think that your current schedule will allow you to do all this?
I have to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay. All right.
it's critical,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
We have very old systems. And one of the things with an asset management plan versus a capital improvement plan, we put capital improvement plans together and then we say, oh, we can't afford to do it, you know, because the money's so tight. But with an asset management plan, you look at that financing and you determine, you put together realistic goals of what you can do. And so, like he said, it's dynamic. You know, the money situation changes, so you'll be updating it. But that's one of the reasons why the DEQ did this, is because they've been having us make capital improvement plans for years, but yet they see that the infrastructure is getting older and older and people aren't getting to the capital. And so if we're going to be sustainable, we have to start looking at the financing mechanism as well.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, council members? Councilman Clark. Yeah, certainly in principle, it sounds great, but my experience on council so far is that the wastewater, the public services departments have been fairly good on top of life expectancies, needs for repairs and maintenance. And what really worries me is what is the long-term cost to the city budget, not the state, not the feds, but the city budget, of trying to implement a program like this. To me, it becomes essentially another unfunded mandate, and that's my biggest worry. I mean, we don't have the millions of dollars to do a plan and then have to do things because it's a plan, as opposed to put it into the infrastructure that needs repairs. And if we're going to be putting tons of time and effort into even creating the plan, I'm beginning to get really worried. We aren't even yet into implementing it, let alone, you know, paying for this. So I have a big worry about this future of this plan being nothing but a administrative nightmare and cost.
You know, I believe that's a very valid concern expressed by all across the state who are up against the same requirement you are. Wastewater infrastructure, in many ways, especially sewers, are buried infrastructure. We don't drive across them all day and hit the potholes. In many ways, what they're looking for is some finding that and there's a significant part of money involved in this effort to actually go down and do condition assessment. This isn't just a document. This is actual investigation and creation of the techniques and the tools to continue to look at so there will actually be people going down and looking at condition of sewers, buried infrastructure that you don't get to see on a regular basis. So you will get back some actual people popping manholes, going down and looking at things, people walking and measuring inside of plants, and it isn't just, actually not a very large percentage goes on the actual document itself. It's the procedures, the tools, the techniques. And you are right. It's at some point, I won't step too far aside from what you asked, but the American Society of Civil Engineers publishes a report card on America that I suggest everyone at some point take a look at. And it talks about the state of infrastructure in America, including water and wastewater. And what it says is exactly your concern. We have a lot of issues we're up against, maybe some things we don't know. We think we're on top of everything that's going on, but it would be nice to have the actual data so that we could feel good about that and make sure we're putting our money where it's really needed. So,
if I may follow up, yeah, sure. Which I appreciate. Actually, I certainly understand the infrastructure issue. And the fact that it's nationwide. None of us, I think, has appreciated the fact that we've been building roads, We're building thousands of, billions of dollars of infrastructure. Even our electrical systems are not maintained adequately. But someone's going to have to pay for doing all those kinds of repairs. And where is the plan for that? This is a plan for what needs to be done, but I see no plan for how it's going to be paid. And that's where I'm coming from. Is this going to be a mandate down from the feds or from the state saying, city, you got to raise $100 million because you got these funds? We don't have $100 million. We can't even do our own budget without having to cut it. So where is that going to come from? Is that part of this plan? If not, who's going to make those decisions and when are they going to come to us?
Well, let me finish. That's the reason why we're going down this road, is because it's going to be all of us making those decisions. We're going to bring this plan back to City Council. You're going to be very aware of what's in it. You're going to be very aware of the costs that we're looking at in the future. And you're going to be making those budget decisions.
Well, what happens if the money's not there? Now where are we?
Well, we're in this.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Where is it coming from?
I think one of the key points with this project is that it will help prioritize those items for which we're bonding. Mm-hmm. Right now, wastewater hasn't been doing as much, but water has done a lot of projects, and we've bonded for a lot over the past several years. But this will give Kim and her staff a methodology by which to rank those projects when we're looking at bonding. That's going to be important because, as Councilman Clark mentions, we had about, I believe it was $116 million project, somewhere around there, that was mandated by the state.
Around 120 million.
Some years ago, and that is about to be, those bonds will be paid off in the next few years. So I think we'll have the ability to do more wastewater projects without necessarily increasing fees, because as those bonds come off, we'll have those new projects in line and we'll probably do more bonding. So hopefully this will give us an opportunity to better show council this is the state of our system, and we're going to take this top 5% as our first project to tackle because it makes the most sense.
Well, I think that's a good idea. Don't get me wrong, knowing where you need to spend your money first is a great idea. It gets back to maybe we have too much infrastructure. Maybe we need to be looking at what we should be cutting back, not just what should we be adding or repairing or replacing, but what can we do to reduce that cost ultimately.
Right. Well, I think one of the things we talk about the realistic goals and the realistic level of service goals that we set as a part of this plan, and that includes financing. We have to be realistic with affordability in this community and what we can afford to do, and then balance that with criticality of what needs to be done. And so we'll be making better if nothing else, it would help us make better decisions on how we spend the money that we do have.
I do want to follow up another
You go
thought.
ahead.
Thank you. This is a great time.
You're good.
I've always wondered why and what the thought process, that's not the right way to put it, what the conclusions have been about whether having a combined sewer system is really the right way we should be serving our citizens with the cost associated with treating all rainwater events, not just sewage. Mm-hmm. Is that something that could be part of this to see whether maybe we are going the wrong way? Maybe we need to do something different? Or would that have to be something different that we would look at?
I think that would be a different discussion. It's something that should be looked at because, after all, we're looking at those assets that we put in place as a part of this condition
and our wearing
assessment
out.
and where they're at now, and looking at what the future life cycle costs may be when we go through this process, we may get to that point where we say, maybe we should be looking at going in a different direction because of the future life cycle costs to maintain that infrastructure that we put in place.
Well, as long as I think it should be on everyone's mind as part of what needs to be looked at. Because
Exactly.
I don't think it has been thought about seriously by anybody in a long time. And now is the time, if we're going to do a study like this, we're looking at the cost, long-term of maintaining this, the water retention basins, all that equipment and materials, and maintaining a wastewater treatment plant for all the rainwater as opposed to wastewater. We should be looking at that as well.
Yes.
Keep it in mind.
Okay.
Thank you.
All set, all set? You have a comment?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Mason, thank you for being very knowledgeable, and you bring a level of comfort to the discussion when we're talking about expenditures at this magnitude because of your knowledge base, and I want to appreciate you for that. But also for this selection, you know, the presentation by the two colleagues here from Greeley and Hanson, I think was very, I won't use the word elementary in a way that means understandable, and I think that's half the issue when you have complex, in-depth discoveries that needs to take place, but you're able to articulate it in layman's terms. I think that says a lot about your knowledge base as well, and your ability to make it understandable to folks who aren't engineers and et cetera. But I also feel and sense a level of confidence in just listening and going through your presentation from this company. So in that selection, I think it was a wise selection. So, but just going forward in this effort, I think gives us the tools that we need to make sound decisions and wise decisions. And I appreciate those comments from Councilman Clark. He raised some great points. But to have this asset registry data log, that was very impressive. I thought, you know, it gives us an idea of, you know, the life expectancy, the condition code, you know, level that we need to look at, the year service cycle. So as we're planning and making those decisions, as you indicated, this is all of our decisions. And when we come back and talk about priorities, as the city manager said, that's what we've done in the past when we made those tough decisions. We brought the data back, we've discussed it, we looked at it, and we put it in the priority category, and we made the decision. So I appreciate this. I want to commend you for the selection first, and also just having the foresight to move aggressively to do this. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay.
I heard you correctly, just to follow up on Councilman Clark. It's just giving us, I guess, to help us prioritize, but if we're not able to make that call, there's no penalty to the city, if I'm hearing you correctly. It's like, well, you're supposed to have done this, so you got to pay us back the grant funds for things. I'm just giving a possible assumption, but I just want to clarify what Councilman Clark was asking. There's no penalty if we're not able to follow through on the recommendation that this system is offering us.
For applying for the grant, we have to set in place a funding mechanism for a certain percentage of what's in the initial plan. And it's, what is that percentage?
I think they call it like a gap analysis at the end of this. We look to see what the funding is required, and if the rates are not at that spot, you're supposed to do a 10% thing.
Yep.
The gap, of that gap, you need to raise them about 10% within the first 3 years, I think.
Right. It's not hammering you to do everything that's in the plan. It's just saying that when you look at how much money you have versus what the gap is, if this plan is pretty large, then you at least make an effort of doing at least 10% of the plan.
That could be high.
You push it forward at least a minimum of that 10%.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we have no idea what that's going to be.
We don't know what
That
that
could
is
be millions.
currently.
That could be millions.
Yes.
It could be. You're back, aren't you? I kind of thought you were, and I'll finish up because we're going to be moving on.
It's like
Yes, it is.
It's almost certain
It is.
At some point, you're saying that this, by us doing this, whether it's, even if not initially, at some point, they're going to say you don't have enough funds if we don't.
The only issue with this whole project is that we're going to do it no matter what, because it's going to be tied to our permit. And so we can pay the $2 million in the future out of our own pockets to do this plan, or we can take advantage of the grant money and do it now.
I'm not knocking the fact of doing the plan. I think it's a good idea, and having the grant funds is important to do it. But it still gets back to what's behind it. What's behind it is the state saying, we want you cities to put more money into these things, and you got to pay for it. That's what it is, right?
Yes. Yes.
Something that we have to do anyway. It's not a choice that we
I understand, but I guess that's why I bring up the idea of a combined sewer issue, whether that we should be addressing different things beyond what we initially looked at in the scope of this project, or this plan. Should we be looking at something very broader and saying, how can we reduce those future costs so that we can afford it? That we'll have a system, an infrastructure we can't afford.
Right.
That, to me, is the more important thing in the study than anything else.
But, and I think it's important to note that Kim and her staff do that all the time anyway.
Right.
It's something that they're constantly looking at. How do you change operation to reduce cost? How do you rebuild things? Do you take things offline? That's part of managing a system that was built for 100,000 residents, and now we have half of that. So that's important for both water and our wastewater system. And I have to say that that's something that Kim and Phil both look at on a fairly routine basis. And this one project that you mentioned, and as Kim said, is very valid to look at the combined sewer because of the fact that it was a $120 million project, and what's your long-term cost associated with that. So that's a good point, and I know I'm confident that Kim's often thinking of those issues as well.
Thank you.
Council members? Well, I got just a couple, and I'll be looking over at my city attorney to make sure I don't go out of bounds on this. I'm not familiar with Greenlee and Henson.
Greeley and Hanson?
Yeah. Where are you located?
My office is in Detroit, Michigan.
Uh-huh.
We have a headquarters in Chicago, but we were part of the Water Master Plan.
Yeah, but you're
Back in
Detroit and
2009.
Chicago right
Yep.
now, right?
Yep.
Okay. How much of the 1.3 million do you outsource that you have other companies do?
Yep, we have 6 or 7 sub-consultants on the team. So Aramosa is here to do some data management, and Wade Trim will be doing some work also. We have a rate consultant that will be on staff, and Tetra Tech is going to be helping us with some controls work. Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for the presentation, and as we're talking about the budget, as Councilman Fitzpatrick said, and I think, we often talk about public safety and we think of police and fire, but the water department provides safe drinking water to most of Saginaw County and all of the city. And wastewater and stormwater treatment is done for the entire city, and we also contract with a number of other communities. So I think we often don't think about that part of the city because the work that they do is funded through enterprise funds, so we're not usually talking about the limited funds there, but it's very important work, and it's Kim and her staff and Phil with the distribution part both do a great job. And I would guess that probably Kim's ability to communicate that so clearly comes from her undergraduate education that she receives. That concludes the management update.
witness is the consent agenda.
And the agenda has been available at City Hall, on our website, and also on SGTV Channel 191. Need a motion to adopt the consent agenda, leaving room for exceptions. It's been moved and supported. Are there any exceptions? Councilman Balls?
Yeah, I just wanted to state when we,
Which exception is
okay,
it?
I'm going to tell you right now, sir.
Okay.
Number 6.
Number 6. Is there any other exceptions? Any other council members with exceptions? I will have exceptions to 8 and 14. Is there any other exceptions? As far as the consent agenda is concerned, are there any other exceptions? Being none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor. Your first exception is item number 6, approve the grass cutting services agreement for $45,000 with the Saginaw County Land Bank Authority from May 5th, 2015 through July 30th, 2015. Further, approve a budget adjustment for fiscal year 2015 of $30,000 to recognize a portion of these funds. The remaining portion of $15,000 will be budgeted in fiscal year 2016, and that was Councilman Balls.
Yeah, I was just hoping that maybe we can get some people that's in those neighborhoods to cut the grass. You know what I'm saying? I don't know who's going to be cutting this grass, but hopefully we can get some people that's in the neighborhoods where the grass need to be cut. It would spur some hope in the neighborhoods of kids can see in if their dads or brothers or some kids in the neighborhoods can get to cut that grass, you know, and spread the wealth, you know, in those particular neighborhoods where we need help at.
Yeah, this money here, for the most part, we've dabbled with contracting out in-house, but this is going to be similar to last year, and it's all just not for cutting grass. It's actually land management where we do some burn-offs and we do overseeding with clover and attempt to get some clover, maybe plant some trees, but a portion of it is for grass cutting, and we utilize 2 seasonal employees for the city of Saginaw and 8 temporary workers. We try to put out 5 two-man crews, and that's what this money's to assist with as well. So we do hire 8 individuals through temporary agencies. And we're looking for some of them right now, as they talked earlier about some open positions. So if anybody knows anybody that's willing to apply, you can come to the Public Services Department and see myself or Mr. Bruce Carradine, the facility administrator. So,
thank you. I'd like to make a motion that we approve that.
Motion to approve number 6? Support. Support. Is there any further discussion? Yes, you can.
I might be making assumptions about what Councilman Ball was asking, but, you know, I guess he was just looking for some ways of doing things differently since we're doing what we did last year and we still had a number of complaints. And I appreciate the city manager getting back to me on some of the questions I had, some of the long-term resolutions that we devised. And I was just wondering, do we have any ideas as far as some of those test properties that we're I guess we're testing some of our long-term solutions, when we're going to get back those results?
yes, Mr. Miller and myself were just talking about it because we kind of work on it as a team. It's just not myself or my division. I work with Saginaw Future, Tom Miller, Jeff Klopsick assists, John Stemple. And right now, just as it's been kind of a slow warm-up, so we really can't tell some of the lots how they're going to produce, but we have recently went out to some of them where we've done 3 or 4 different types. We're trying to figure out what's going to work best before I go out and do thousands of lots, because we got over, I think, 5,000 vacant lots to cut. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks with the heat and the rain and all that, that stuff will start to germinate. And wherever we can tell what best as far as the clover goes, we've done processes where we cut it twice, we raked it, we cut it once, didn't rake, certain pounds per square foot application. So whatever one ends up as far as planting the clover working out best, that's what we're going to do. And then what I'm hoping to do is, of them 5 crews, I want to take one and just designate them to overseeding. I want to get 300, 400, 500 lots a year done if possible, or more, depending on how fast we can get through, so that hopefully in the next 3 to 5 years, that can reduce the amount of cutting that we have to do. So as soon as we can get some more of them photos and see how well it's doing, I'd like to report back with some images and pictures for council so you can see.
I guess I was concerned is we're getting to the growing season, I guess, and I just want to be able to set expectations of some of our residents and make them feel confident. I guess as Councilman Moore was saying, that we're working on a longer term solution to this issue that appears to come up yearly. But thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other go ahead. Discussion? Discussion?
What, yeah, I'm special.
Go ahead.
I'm real special. What are the requirements? I know that you say we have jobs. Is that posted where people know online?
Yes. All of our job postings are on the city website. Anyone can also stop by the Human Resources office and look at all the job postings for the city. We have applications that can be filled out in the office. They can print them out online and fill them out at home and bring them in. All the qualifications are listed on there as well, so it should give all the information anyone would need to know.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead,
If I may,
Councilman Clark.
actually, it's more of a comment. Mr. Carwin, I'm well aware of, and I appreciate the efforts that you and the people you mentioned are working towards a long-term solution, but I think we all got to be patient because the vagaries of weather, seeding, we could be 2 or 3 years before we really get a good handle on what will work best.
Sure.
For us to assume that we're going to know, just is no way. We might get a little bit of a hint this year, but frankly, we're not likely to know very well yet for some years what will work best. So I'm almost reluctant to suggest we go out and reseed all of a sudden this year because it might be the wrong choice but I mean, I understand why you want to get going on it.
Well, I mean, the problem we have, the thing that actually works best is when they do the housing demolitions and they get the earth right to bare ground, because obviously all your seed gets soil contact and, you keep the weeds down and that clover develops. But that's so cost prohibitive because of the labor intensiveness. So now we're trying to look at how can we just get in there quick, cut it, rake it, and seed it, overseed it, and if that can choke out all the grass and the weeds, that's so we can get more done with less. So.
But it is a long term, and that's something we've all got to remember. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
on the comment of the seeding, I know we've met several times with the land bank, yourself and I, and the city manager and the county officials. Maybe it might be a good idea to bring some of that proof back, as Councilman Tibbs indicated, to show, because I know, for example, there is a lot on 21st Street that was seeded, and that's around the block from me, so I've been able to look at it, and the levels are, even now with all the rain, are manageable. So I know there's been some positive, benefits to the seeding. So I think by showing that, again, that will give the residents confidence to say, hey, we started on this path to do something different, because we were saying we couldn't keep up with the cutting, but we want to try an alternative for long term. So I've seen a couple lots that's close to me that have really, shown some promise as it relates to, not having a tall grass, with the rain, et cetera. So that might be a good thing to do for us.
One of those meetings maybe June, after we get through with this budget process, and it'll give Phil and Tom and the people working on that a couple more weeks of growing, because if you've driven around, you've also seen that Phil's staff had planted some trees and arborvitae, some different things, so we can show several different options. And I totally agree with Councilman Clark. This is a very long-term process whereby we may even see in 5-6 years we need to replant clover. If it's something that's worked, but this will give us opportunity to see if it works for X period of years, that might die out, but then we'll know what to do when that time comes again. So we should expect to have one of those meetings again in maybe a month or so.
Okay, anything further? No further. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Mayor, your next exception is number 8. Approve the agreement with Spicer Group for $134,323 to evaluate and recommend alternatives for water system improvements. And that was Mayor Browning's
Thank you.
exception.
And I need to abstain on this vote. For conflict, a possible conflict of interest, I will be abstaining on this vote. So if another council member wants to entertain a motion, they can go ahead, but I will have to abstain.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye. Aye. And opposed, and I abstain. Does that sound all right? You didn't hear a nay in there, did you?
Sure. We need a roll call vote
Well,
to abstain.
yeah, I don't know why you didn't tell me that right off the bat.
Well, sorry.
Okay, Madam Clerk, roll call.
I will. Councilman Tibbs. Councilwoman Bench. Mayor Pro Tem O'Neill.
Aye.
Councilman Flores is absent. Councilwoman Moore.
Aye.
Councilman Balls.
Aye.
Councilman Clark.
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Mayor Browning.
Abstain.
Abstain. We have 7 yes vote, 1 abstain, 1 absent. Motion's carried.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Our next exception is item number 14. Approve the agreement with Greeley and Hansen and issue a purchase order in an amount not to exceed $1,367,098 to provide an asset management plan and develop an asset management program for the city's wastewater treatment and collection systems. And that was Mayor Browning.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, aye. I oppose it.
And we need a
Roll call. Thank you.
Hold on a minute. You make a motion.
I just voted. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Go ahead.
If the mayor sustained from voting for number 8,
Yeah,
okay, because you may have a conflict of interest,
yes.
then how can you vote for another one that's doing the same type of work and vote no if you got a conflict of interest with the first one? You seem like your conflict is still happening.
I voted no.
What I'm saying is, how can you vote no on an issue that in the previous one, you have conflict of interest because they're doing similar work?
Well, it wasn't the matter of the issue.
I'll refer to the city attorney.
And correct me if I'm wrong there, but I think your concern of a conflict is with regard to the parties and not the work that's being
That's right.
performed.
Yes.
That's the parties, not the work.
Okay. I don't get it.
So we need the roll call. Councilwoman Bench. Mayor Pro Tem O'Neill. Councilman Corus is absent. Councilwoman Moore.
Yes.
Councilman Balls.
Yes.
Councilman Clark.
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick. Councilman Tibbs. And Mayor Browning.
No.
We have 7 yes votes and 1 no, and 1 absent. Motion is carried.
Motion passed. Thank you.
Our next order of business is reports from boards, commissions, and committees, and appointment of board and commission members.
Okay. Is there any committee reports? Any boards or commissions or committee reports? Being none, we'll go right on to appointments. You want me to read them?
No, I can read them if
Okay,
you'd
thank you.
like them separate. The first appointment is to approve the mayoral reappointment of Suzanne Mason to the Saginaw Arts and Enrichment Commission with a term to expire June 30th, 2018.
Point of order, can we do them both together?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
That's what our practice has been. The second appointment is mayoral appointment of Alfred Vinson to the Local Officers Compensation Commission with a term to expire March 1st, 2017.
Been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Being none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Mayor, next order of business is motions and miscellaneous business.
Is there any business to come before the council before we go on? Okay? No new business? We have a motion then to
Move to go into closed session.
move to go in closed session. We'll need a roll call, is that correct? Go in closed
Not
session?
for a closed session.
We're going in closed session. We've been doing roll call.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do need a roll call. Sorry.
That's what I thought.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem O'Neill. Councilman Flores is absent. Councilwoman Moore.
Yes.
Councilman Balls.
Yes.
Councilman Clark.
Yes.
Councilman Fitzpatrick. Councilman Tibbs. Councilwoman Bench. Mayor Browning.
Yes.
We have 8 yes and 1 absent.
Okay.